This is an auto check, thanks. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regularly scheduled council meeting for March the 9th, 2026. As we call the meeting to order, we'd just like to acknowledge that we gather and do our work on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and that their historic connections to these lands and the adjoining waters continue to this day. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder? Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? Just to point out anybody following the agenda package that the item that was 8.2, that is the grant and aid pieces, has been moved from 8.2 to 7.4 on the updated agenda that came out this afternoon. Otherwise, there's no changes. Section 3 is adoption of minutes. We can move all 4 minutes at the same time. And if there's any changes or corrections, we can ask for amendments. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And then just move receipt of the Advisory Planning Commission meetings from January 21st. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much for that. Mayor's remarks this evening are brief. I did just want to acknowledge yesterday was International Women's Day, and there was a great amount of pride and information shared out on the district's workforce and support for women in our community. So I just want to thank the communication staff and all of our staff for doing that. I want to just remind everybody that our next budget meeting is scheduled for this Thursday, March the 12th, starting at 6 p.m. Aligned with that, sort of, just timing-wise, it came out just today that the Government Finance Officers Association Award, which recognizes excellence in financial reporting, awarded OPE its award for both for its 2025 to 2029 financial plan, that's last year's, and our annual report from 2025. So I just want to acknowledge Ms. LaChance and her whole team, as well as the communications team who put all of that together for us every year. We never won it until a few years ago, and now it seems like it's almost expected, but thank you for all the work to get there. I also want to just note that there is the Heritage Foundation, which is sort of a third-party group of people that the council supports, puts on a series of lectures, heritage lectures, and there's one coming up this Wednesday at 7 o'clock, part of a regular series. This one does look very interesting. It's titled The View of Victoria. There's 4 speakers. And they're going to walk through, there's a fairly mysterious 1860 lithograph of the Inner Harbour, and there's representation from both heritage experts, member of the Songhees Nation, and others that are going to be speaking to this lithograph and what the story might be telling within that. So I think it'll be quite an excellent talk, and probably going to be oversubscribed for seating, as it often is. I always hesitate to advertise it here because I just worry that it's going to add more people than our seats. Also, just want to give a brief update to council. There was a motion here just to express interest but no commitment on the judicial review work that the View Royal is doing. So just a little update that their work has got an update on Friday. There's a lot of communication happening with different communities. The major urban mayor's caucus is doing some work on that, and really it's just doing pre-legal work just to understand what the context and possibilities are. So. And last but certainly not least, I just wanted to acknowledge on February 25th was the 19th annual Yes Awards. You probably, if you were reading the Oak Bay News last week, you saw the many amazing youth that we celebrate. And for those of you who don't know, the Yes Awards, or the Young Exceptional Star Awards, were started 19 years ago by Councillor Braithwaite. I just want to acknowledge both the vision for creating those awards, but also the work to continue them right through COVID and everything else. A lot of things faded off over the years, and that is continuing on. So next year is a big 20th anniversary. I also just want to thank the sponsors of those awards, because they couldn't exist without the very active business community that we have in this town. That concludes the Mayor's remarks, but thank you very much, Councillor Braithwaite. And you can probably speak to it in a bit more detail at the Committee of the Whole next week as we do a roundtable. Moving on then to Section 7. So, oops, that's not true. I have public comment and question period next. I'm not the only one who's allowed to talk. So for those of you who aren't familiar, at every council and committee of the whole meeting, we allow time for members of the public to speak to council. This is on non-land use issues and issues that aren't on the agenda. We do typically ask that people provide their input at the time of the agenda item for those agenda items. But with that, it's a fairly open piece. If people wish to speak to us about anything of interest, things that are new, things that are upcoming, this is the opportunity. So invite people to come forward. There's a fairly full room here, so someone might wish to come forward, but also just to express that invitation for those online. If anybody wishes to address council, this is the opportunity to do so. Again, not for items on the agenda, because we'll have the opportunity where they're allowed to have those inputs. So if anybody on the viewing online wishes to use the Zoom app, you can use the reactions tab. Is there anybody in the audience here that would like to come and speak to council? Please come forward, and you can help demonstrate. I think you know the process here, but we ask that you come forward. You just give your name, your municipality of residence, and then you have up to 3 minutes to talk to council.
Thank you. I'm going to make this very brief. Leona Frenette, Oak Bay.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here today because it's been brought to my attention that staff have approved 4 individual units for the address of 3401 Woodburn Avenue. It's my understanding that's not before council because all the decisions were made by staff.
So, Ms. Frenette, we could probably answer some questions for it, but it's if it's something that's compliant with zoning, then it would go through. I'm aware of some of the concerns that have been raised by neighbors.
Yeah.
And I know that there's been questions sent to staff. I don't think they've had a chance to fully respond at this time.
And my comments are broader. I'm
Okay,
just
thank
bringing everybody's attention to what I was saying a year and a half ago is we should be sticking to 4 and no more. Because when we start looking outside the envelope and allowing larger subdivision and development on lots, the accumulated impact on neighborhoods like Woodburn is going to be significant. And so, why I brought that up is that I thought we had some sort of commitment in our community that we were going to be doing the bylaws with respect to the impacts of Bill 44, which to date, it's my knowledge, we don't have any municipal standards, and we keep putting our hands in the air and going, it's out of our hands, the province has made the decisions, and, you know, there's a lot of sorries being said to disgruntled homeowners, which in my mind, sorry doesn't mean anything. So I just bring it to council's attention that I would hope that we will get on with some development of standards for these properties. Specifically, on that back end of Woodburn is, most people know, is a floodplain. And we get significant water from the creeks on both sides of the road. So this 3401 is putting 4 units on that lot for a total square footage of 7,812 feet. I really feel sorry for the neighbors because we all know where water goes. It runs downhill, and once the development on that lot takes place, there's going to be impacts to the neighbors. So I'm not here to challenge the decisions or anything. I'm just asking you to be mindful of what your priorities are this year with respect to the impacts of Bill 44. We may just have to say no to certain projects until we stop thinking about gazing at our navel and actually do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Frenette. Anybody else like to speak to council this evening? Please come forward. I'm going to ask that we don't speak to any specific land use applications, but I appreciate that there was an attempt there to kind of talk in more general terms. So please, same process as before, just push the button in the middle to turn on the microphone, your name, and just your municipality of residence. You don't have to give your address.
My name is Shirley Wright, and I live in Oak Bay. In fact, my property backs directly onto Carnarvon Park. And I have been in touch with council and with the mayor, with other correspondents. In regards to the redevelopment plan, the fenced-in dog park that's proposed immediately behind my backyard, all that would separate my yard from the proposed dog park is a chain link fence. And I would hear everything. The noise of dogs barking, essentially any time of the day, 7 days a week. And that would have a negative impact on my ability to enjoy my backyard. So I just wonder why that was considered, number one, as a viable site, and why it's not considered that it would cause so much noise that it would be in conflict with the noise bylaw that does exist. So in my research doing, about the dog parks and planning, I quickly learned that it's common knowledge that dog parks are active and noisy places, and that's why planners choose a location away from residential properties. And so best planning practices do exist, and they ensure that there's adequate buffer between dog parks and residences, sometimes using berms, landscaping, and other things to reduce noise and protect privacy. But there's no buffer in this current plan. And I think that's because there just isn't enough space in this location. So I don't think it's a viable plan. And what I do think is viable is a larger non-fenced off-leash dog area that could run along the same east side of the park, abutting residential properties, including mine, but at defined hours of the day, much like the off-leash area at Windsor Park. Unlike the proposed small fenced-in dog park, dogs would have the space. They'd actually have that space to run, fetch balls, and play on the grass, and not gravel as is being proposed in the current plan. It's this off-leash option, I believe, would meet the needs of the Carnarvon Park dog community and respect homeowners. And there would be no cost for this type of off-leash area, as it would not require fencing or mitigation of the poor drainage issue. So thank you for your time tonight, and I thank you for considering this issue.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Just for your knowledge that
Yeah.
the detailed plans will be coming back for consideration at a future meeting, so please just stay on top of that. But we've all heard you here tonight for part of that consideration. Thank you. Anybody else wish to come speak to council? Yes, please come forward. You've probably figured out the system by now with the microphone, the name, and the municipality.
Mayor Murdoch and council members, my name is Gloria Brown, and my house is on Eastdowne Road, next door to Shirley Wright's home, where the dog park is planned to go in and butt right up to the chain link fence at my backyard. I agree with all of Ms. Wright's concerns. In the summer months, I enjoy having friends over to sit on my backyard deck. It will not be pleasant if there are dogs chasing around at the fence, barking as they do when they're excited playing with other dogs. It doesn't take many dogs to be very noisy. Having all the dog owners there too will take away from our privacy that we had. Up until now, it has been a quiet space where we could enjoy the days being outside with friends in the fresh air and peacefulness. We would like to continue to have that same pleasure as everyone else does. I don't know of anywhere else where an off-leash dog park goes right up to people's personal properties. There are many other locations around Victoria and Oak Bay where there are much larger off-leash parks. With everything else that's supposedly going into Carnarvon Park, which is not that big a park, I hope you will take another look at this and leave the park as it is now with regard to dogs. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to speak to council? Look online here. I don't see any other hands online. Give one last call if anybody wishes to speak. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And as noted on the Carnarvon Park piece, it will be coming back to council for those detailed considerations. So we move then to section 7, item 7.1. Our first thing is council authorization for the grant application for optimizing development processes. Mr. Bowl, welcome. And for those who don't know, Mr. Bowl is our Director of Community Building and Planning. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. A short introduction on this item. This project has been underway since late 2024, and last spring you received an update about the results of an assessment, and a number of initiatives were identified for follow-up. Some of those have been actioned because they were underway based on council direction already. For example, the minor variances and the delegation of authority for certain permits, minor permits. But there's more work to be done, which is attached to the report. That's the outline that you received last year as well. And this grant opportunity would allow us to have a second, potentially have a second LGDAP grant for development approvals improvements. And it has the potential to cover a lot of the costs that we anticipate for this part 2 that we are preparing for you. And that follow-up, the scope for that will come to you shortly. That said, this grant program has a deadline of this month, so we need your input and direction and endorsement of pursuing this grant to meet the grant application requirements. I'll leave it at that, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bowl. We get lots of debate about reaching out to ask other levels of government for money. Is there any questions of staff before we go ahead, Councillor Green?
Thank you very much, and through you, and thank you for the report. And I just wondered, are we aware of the availability of the grant based on the provincial budget? Is that a factor in application? And it's just a question. Thank you.
Mr. Bowl. Thank you, Mayor. Through you, this program has been put out for proposals recently, and it is through UBCM. So I guess on our part, we hope that that's already taken care of in the past and is not subject to the changes that the province is currently making. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bithby.
Many thanks, Mayor, and through you. Just as far as looking at the report, it notes that there's some digital initiatives that might not be eligible for the grant, and I'm just wondering if those components would still move forward if we didn't get the funding, and if so, how would they be funded? Thank you.
Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, we do have funding already earmarked for this project, regardless. So even if the grant application was not successful, we do have Growing Communities funding reserved for this project. So no, our intent is to action those digitization projects as well as the other initiatives listed in this document. And we have to look at the cost and the available budget that we have remaining. But this is it's not essential for the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions. It's not a thing for public input. So I'll go ahead, Councillor Patterson, if you wish to take a motion after your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just one question for Director Bowl, perhaps on this. It did say that applicants are, of course, responsible for completion of the activities. No surprise there. Is there any set deadline for that? What is the time for allowance for completion of the work?
Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. For you, the completion timeline is two years after approval of the grant.
Thank you. Now I haven't seen any hands, so perhaps I can get a motion to move the staff recommendation. Move in second, and this is for the public's benefit. If you haven't seen, it's just basically applying for grants and delegating the authority to follow through on those grant applications on behalf of council. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. We now move to item 7.2. This is application, official community plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and development permit for 2442 Eastdowne Road. Mr. Green, I believe you're introducing this. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. This is an application for an amendment to the official community plan, a zoning bylaw amendment and a development permit for the property located at 2442 Eastdowne Road. The purpose of the applications are to allow the development of a 16-unit, 5-storey rental apartment building. Council previously considered this application at their meeting of January the 12th of this year and referred the application back to staff to work with the applicant to revise the application. This report presents the applicant's revised proposal for the site and includes other relevant information from the January 12, 2026 report to Council. Following Council's review of the original application, the applicant has made a number of changes to address Council's comments, including the following. Rotating the building to increase a portion of the setback to the neighbouring property on First Street, amend the design of the fourth floor and rooftop level to lessen the shadows projected and lessen the roof profile when looking up, revise the landscape plan, revise the parking study, revise the frontage improvements to widen the existing sidewalk at the corner intersection. In addition, the applicant has field measured the existing multi-unit residential building to the north of the subject property located at 2181 Holtane Street and submitted a new longitudinal section of the proposed building showing its relative height to that of the existing building located at 2181 Holtane Street. Staff are recommending that the bylaws be presented to Council for consideration of first and second reading and scheduling a public hearing to hear from the community on the proposal. The report also presents two further options for Council, which are refer the application back to make further revisions to the project or deny the applications. Should Council want to make the applicant to make further revisions, it would be helpful for Council to pass a motion with the specific changes that Council are seeking on the application. The applicant and his project architect and transportation planning consultant are also here to answer any questions that Council may have on the revised submission, and the project architect would also like to give a short presentation that was included in the agenda package. Happy to answer any questions that Council may have on the application.
Sure, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm happy to welcome Mr. Hardcastle or others to come forward if you wish to provide that presentation. I do note the presentation in the agenda package. We have had a chance to review it. We try and keep these kind of presentations to sort of 5 minutes or so, and there's 30 slides there, so it might be a little bit tight, but I don't want to cut you off. I'm just giving you some parameters of timelines here. If we can. So if I could just ask that you turn on the microphone and just introduce yourself, so for the benefit of the community.
It's not working. Oh. Good evening, Peter Hardcastle on behalf of 2442 Eastdowne Road and on behalf of the owner, Daniel So. At the conclusion of our last presentation, it was lamented at the time that we could not see this building in the way it was presented, as if it was viewed from the street. So this is that very perspective, viewed from the street along Eastdowne. This places a multifamily building in a location surrounded by similar forms, where services exist for them and where schools, shops, and sports facilities are available. I view this project as being within a community filled with multifamily buildings. It's not extending the community further. It is within this node of development, and we feel, although we're not central to it, we are definitely within it. We have labeled in our new drawings. My apologies, the slides are going exceptionally slowly. We have labeled within the new drawing set the series of occupiable floor levels in all the buildings that are surrounding the project, and including the building at the very north side of our project. The neighboring four-story building facade at our northern property line. That building property is actually 3 stories when viewed from Holtane Street. We have numbered those occupiable floor levels, and because of the concern for that particular building, we did measure that building with lasers on the existing property, developed a longitudinal section, which is about to come up shortly. And you can see here from Holtane Street drawn all the way through to Fair Street, and if I zoom in, we can see that 2181 Holtane Street, built in 1955, currently 71 years old, likely framed with 8'1" from floor to floor. It has a known highest occupiable residential floor. Our highest occupiable residential floor is approximately 5'1" above that. or 22 millimeters per year. Our building is framed with 9-foot floor-to-floor heights, and because of that, the difference of 5 feet from our highest residential floor to the Haultain Street highest residential floor, currently 5 feet by the proposal, would actually only be 2 feet if we were framing with the same 8-foot floor-to-floor difference. I've zoomed in on this portion of the street because I took an individual's height and placed them on the street sidewalk on the Fair Street Avenue, measured the site angle towards our existing low parapet, and then I did the same to Haultain Street, and the Haultain Street view, just about to come up. Although the site plan, when measured in an identical way, is a tad higher. It is only higher by mere inches. It's not even a full foot. Here we see in the former site plan, the building's L-shaped provides an open corner. Each corner of the building has open balconies. That decreases the perception of this building volume. And this is the former building plan. The new building plan rotates the building subtly. We adjusted the balcony so we could rotate it even further. And now, formerly, where bay windows against our adjacent Fair Street neighbor were 2 meters away, they're now 2.7 meters away. Measured to the corner balcony, that is now 3.1 meters away, clearly opening up the perspective to the neighbor. I bring up the tree canopy study here to draw everybody's attention to a large multi-stem deciduous tree located between the two properties. That's quite a shadow caster, which is important because shadow casting became a big note of concern. We have changed all of the shadow calculations so that the project is oriented true north-south, so everybody can appreciate sun coming up in the east, traveling through the day, and going down in the west. So as we can see here on the project diagram about to come up, in the spring and the fall, in the morning, our shadows have actually cleared the neighboring Fair Street building by 9 a.m. And there's a small insert to see that the shadow has passed by it. If I was to turn on the trees, as I have shown here on the lowest diagram, the trees all along that property boundary are likely larger contributors to shadows than are the new building. If I go to the summer, the sun comes up a little further over. Our shadows do interrupt or do intercept their neighboring building on Fair Street, but only at the very back. And they do reach the base of our northern neighbor, but only at the very base. In the summer, with trees, we can again see the trees are the greater contributor, likely, of shadows. If we go to the summer months, and we go to the spring and fall months shown here, both at noon, the first two diagrams, one above each other, the shadows are cast entirely within the property. And as we go to the important afternoon shadows, these are all cast over the street itself. There was some confusion that we would be expressing shadows over neighbors at all time. This is truly, this is not going to occur. 2442 Eastdowne Road is a very walkable project. It has a walk score of 79. It has a bike score of 88. And because of this, it is very suitable for a parking study. And before we go on to the parking study, because there was a concern about the width of the neighboring sidewalks against the property, we increased or doubled the width of the sidewalk at the intersection so somebody could clearly pass another person with strollers, with bikes, with a gathering of people at the intersection. And the red area at the bottom is known as a football, and apparently a football shape has been used both in Oak Bay and surrounding municipalities, and we will gladly work with Oak Bay engineers to come up with an acceptable solution. Our site-specific parking study indicated that 10 stalls were suitable for this building. And the study recognized that 14 stalls of these are documented as required, and 4 stalls are being replaced by parking reduction measures. It's important to go through those measures, and those parking reduction measures start with the provision of a car share program. And a car share program is typically worth 5 stalls, both on municipalities on the mainland and municipalities here on the south end of Vancouver Island. So we have already passed that requirement for the reduction of 4 stalls. Included in that parking study is a request for 3 e-bikes for an additional 10%. We have, over and above that, 5 additional e-bikes coming as a part of the project. The requested stalls for overlength bikes and cargo bikes have been met with the project, and in addition, we have expansion capacity for those in the project. All of that is accommodated with private bikes on the lower floor, which means that the commuter bike room on the ground floor is entirely bonus space. That means that that space is available for children going back and forth to school, people commuting to work, avid cyclists that are using their bicycles at all time. And here the project is. And the reason I show this insert is because we've successfully included a waste and recyclables room fully enclosed in the building, which was another noted concern. We have illustrated 2 street-side public parking spaces on Eastdowne just to prove that there is room for them, and they are labeled as public parking spaces. There are 2 public parking spaces indicated on the Fair Street side in order to prove that there is definitely space for public spaces there as well. And we have still a short-term dedicated delivery stall. This is also a service to the greater public. All of these stalls represent a service and a safer way to park for the neighborhood than is there now. It is not private or exclusive to our project in any way. In addition, earlier we demonstrated that the 4th floor is set back substantially both on the Eastdowne side and on the Fair Street side, and this red area indicates portions of the building that were set back. And we've improved that one step further, which was recently reviewed by Brian Green. As the next floor plan comes up, the northern staircase, the roof now descends with the stair. The western staircase is entirely outside, even with a glass railing, so it is descending as well. That breaks the 4th floor volume into smaller pieces. It's quite important what shadows are cast from a building. It's also very important when you look up that that roof profile is articulated. You have sky peaks between portions of the building. We've also adjusted the setback of the exterior walls for that corner unit and affected its balcony design by reducing it. All of that improves the shadow patterns on all of the neighbors and reduces the impact of the building. I show here the roof plan now entirely surrounded in its occupied area with glass railings. All of the parapets are low to cast the least amount of sun on its neighbors. And within the set of drawings now in your possession, we do have confirmation that all of the materials and surfaces and articulations that were approved before by ADP, approved by APC, still remain a part of the project. We have in the section of drawings this evening, we have both landscape drawings at the ground level surrounding the property and the rooftop landscaping plan included in this package, so we could refer to it at any time. And I close this evening just with the final rendering of the building as it appears from the sidewalk along Eastdowne Road. And we're certainly here to answer any of your questions this evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hardcastle and Mr. So for being here. We do have obviously 3 options here. We can advance this to public hearing, we can decline, and we can send it back. I think we had a pretty robust discussion last time around some of the queries, so if we're going to send it back, I'm going to ask it to be very, very clear. But I think what I would like to do is get through any questions that the council has of the applicants, and then get to a motion and start having some discussion here about the merits of the application and what to do next. So questions first. Please go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor. I do have a number of questions. But first, my first question would be to staff through you. In your report, you talk about this being a 16-unit, 5-story rental apartment building, but I see on the presentation that we have in front of us, it says 4-story, and then also from the staff report, the advisory design panel approved a design for a new 4-story rental apartment building. So can you just give clarification? Is this a 5-story building or is this a 4-story building?
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, this is a 4-story residential building, but under our definition of stories, within the district zoning bylaw. Given that the rooftop access has a ceiling within it, we therefore consider that to be a story. So, as noted in the report, we're essentially saying this is a five-story building, given that rooftop access has a ceiling within it and therefore is included within the definition of story.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, thank you, because yes, when you're standing on the street and looking up, it definitely looks like a five-story building, whereas I would say that the one on Haltane, when you're standing in the front, when you look up, it's a three-story building. So in the report says that multifamily rental buildings typically exhibit lower parking demand than strata buildings, but the report doesn't provide any local data that supports this claim. So I'm wondering, is this based on Victoria-specific data or generic North American studies? Because really, Oak Bay demographics may differ significantly, and I'm just wondering what local data supports that conclusion, particularly for Oak Bay.
Sure, I'm not sure where I should give that to the applicant or to staff.
Through your worship, I could always make a start, but perhaps the applicant's transportation planning consultant may also address that question. I guess from an Oak-based perspective, we don't have any specific data in relation to rental buildings. We did do some analysis as part of the land use scenarios, as part of the OCP, where one of our subconsultants, Geolica, did do a GHG memo based on those three land use scenarios, and through their analysis, they did have some data from ICBC on all multi-unit residential buildings showing a parking ratio of 0.77 units, parking stalls per unit. Perhaps the transportation consultant may also be able to answer that specific question in terms of the difference of ratio between a strata building and a rental building.
Sure, I take it they're online, is that correct? You can just, oh, there you are, welcome. If you just introduce yourself for the record.
Hello, thank you, Mayor. My name is Mallory Lowe's. I'm a transportation planner at WAP Consulting Group, working with the applicant on this project. Through the Mayor, Councillor Braithwaite, that's a great question, and one that we kind of evaluated with is whether we collect, the rental parking demand data within Oak Bay to get that like true estimated parking demand. However, in the interest of time, as obtaining that data can take quite a bit of time, a few months, we opted to do research among other municipalities within the capital region, where in other parking studies that we've done throughout the region, the parking demand rate for rental tenures has been lower than strata tenures. This stands to be true across other municipalities across North America, like you mentioned, but it has found to be particularly present within the capital region.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks. I guess I'll stay on with parking since you're online. The parking study uses a wide area instead of immediate streets, it looks to me like. So it concludes that there's 77 available on-street parking spaces in the wider area based on an evening peak occupancy of 57%. I'm wondering if that might be a bit misleading, as the study appears to assess a broad surrounding area, not just the streets closest to the development, because I think in reality, residents rarely park several blocks away from their homes. Most parking demand concentrates on adjacent streets. So I think that's particularly true at nighttime. So while the study claims there's 77 spaces available, the numbers within one block of the building may be much smaller. And I think that really matters because the project already proposes half of the required parking. Required is 20, they're proposing 10. So even if a small number of the tenants own vehicles, the spillover could quickly exceed the street capacity. So my question is, the parking study refers to parking availability in the wider area. Could you clarify how many on-street parking spaces are typically available within one block of the site during evening peak demand, if you have that information, please?
Sure, over to you, Ms. Lowe's.
Through the Mayor, thank you. Yes, so we chose Haltane Street, Eastdowne Road, Cadborough Bay Road, Fair Street, and Epworth Street for our on-street parking assessment because those were the most likely streets where visitors to the proposed development would likely be approaching the development on. And therefore, we chose those streets where it's kind of within a walking radius to the development as well. However, on Eastdowne Road, where the development fronts, we counted 22 total available spaces on the east side of the road, and then a total of 16 spaces on the west side of the road. So that'd be a total of 38 possible parking spaces along Eastdowne Road from Haltane Street to Cadborough Bay Road. And we found that at the peak occupied time, which was in the evening at 9:30 p.m. on a weeknight, that Eastdowne Road on the east side was 55% occupied, and on the west side was 50% occupied. So we did find that there were still spaces available to accommodate the estimated overflow that we calculated, which was only 2 vehicles. So within the available parking spaces, we found that the extra 2 vehicles that we're anticipating would likely be accommodated by the available on-street parking.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. Councillor Braithwaite, you had to...
Thank you. My next question will be around the proposed car share program, because that's basically taking, I think, it's accounting for 5 parking spots, I believe, I heard in the presentation. But I'm wondering if the proposed car share program were discontinued in the future, would there be any mechanism for the district, this is probably to district staff then, for any mechanism for the district to require replacement transportation demand measures or additional parking? So if that moto program share was to go away, would we have any recourse on getting additional parking?
Mr. Green?
Through your worship, to that question, so we will be seeking, should this application be approved, we will be recommending a Section 209 legal covenant be registered as a charge on title to require those TDM measures, and ultimately it depends on how that legal covenant is worded in respect to should that scenario occur, whether we then have the recourse to enforce that covenant to ensure that there is a replacement or alternative TDM measures put in place through that legal agreement.
And the applicant was nodding that that was the intent was, but Mr. With the applicant, Mr. Hardcastle or Mr. So like to comment on that, or is that sufficient?
I think it's important to note that there are multiple companies that are providing these services. So there are various companies that are capable of providing car share programs, and should one of them have a business failure, then there are certainly others that could pick up that responsibility. And it's important to note that as part of that development permit process, it is a legal responsibility to provide it. It is registered on title, as are all the other parking reduction measures. We seem to exceed the reduction requirement of 4 stalls by a significant amount. And we recognize the legal requirements for those enacted by passing bylaws and regulations registered on title, that it's a permanent award to the project, to the site.
Thank you for that. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, I'm asking these questions because I know that the parking reductions are irreversible, basically, and that we have really limited, as a municipality, we'd have really limited ability to fix the issue later. So if the parking assumptions in the study prove incorrect, and the residents of the building do own vehicles at higher rates, what tools would we as a district have to address potential parking overflow for the surrounding neighborhood?
I think that's really a staff question, probably more than an applicant question. It's true, probably any building, but just as a...
Correct. I don't know if my colleague in engineering may be able to answer that question. Our Director of Engineering is online, also available to answer any questions on parking.
Mr. Rennick?
Good evening, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
We did. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So council under the Streets and Traffic Bylaw has the ability to designate limited time parking or resident only parking through an order. And the way that the bylaw is written in Oak Bay, residents can only park along the frontage of their building or directly across the street from their building. So council at any time has the power and authority to issue resident only parking, should that be what council deems as the required solution to a problem.
Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. And then going back to the Modo parking spot, I know in the consultant's report, they actually talked about having, they would need to have an on-street parking spot specifically for the Modo spot. And so I'm wondering, I mean, then if we have to then give that parking spot up, then you're taking another parking spot away from around the building. So now you have a parking spot that is designated for deliveries and a parking spot that's designated for Modo. And I know you're going to turn to me and you're going to say, but anybody can use the Modo, but that's still taking a parking spot away from the rest of the neighborhood. So I wonder if, and then also you would have two, on one of your maps, it shows stall number 10. It calls that guest parking or HC. It says that on the map. And so I'm wondering what stall 10 is designated for visitor parking, or is it accessible parking? And if so, how many parking spots would that mean remain? So there's the Modo question and there's the stall number 10 question.
Sure, I'll go to the applicant. So just some clarification on the 10 stalls, what's included there?
There are 10 stalls indicated on the property, and there's 10 stalls indicated as being required in the parking study on site. The parking study goes on to state, and Mallory may correct me if I'm wrong, that the potential burden of guest parking on the neighborhood is 2 cars. We wanted to factually prove that we had space along the boundaries of the building for 4 cars, so it was encouraged that we illustrate all 4 of them so that people can see that in the future, if there was a bylaw enacted that said residential parking only, our guest parking spaces do exist entirely within the boundaries of the property. The guest stall or handicap stall, there are 2 handicap stalls indicated on this property. In light of the most recent parking study, the word guest should be removed and it's just a parking stall, but they are 2 handicap stalls on this property. It does relate to a very seemingly unrelated point, but in a building with an elevator, we're far more able to accommodate the physically disabled than townhouses or other housing forms that don't. So having 2 handicap stalls is quite good to have on such a small boutique-like development that we have here.
Just to follow up to that, Mayor, if I may. So if you have 2 of those 10 stalls designated as handicap, then really you only have 8 stalls for the remainder of the units.
My apologies for not being clear. No, we have 10 stalls on the property, and it means if you have a resident who is physically disabled, they can have one of those stalls. If you have 2 residents that are physically disabled, they can use those stalls. It's a benefit to actually have more handicap stalls than would regularly be required.
Thank you. So they're not handicap designated, they just can't, they're wide enough and so forth to support it. Is that the clarification?
Correct.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks. So the developer is suggesting that this site is an area with significant number of similar multifamily properties, and that the project is surrounded by similar building forms. And I'm wondering if that might be a bit of a problem with this claim, as the actual zoning map shows that the subject site and most surrounding lots are R5, or low density, and only a cluster of apartment buildings to the north are zoned RM3. So in reality, it's truly not surrounded by apartment zoning, and I think the apartment buildings nearby are more of a pocket, not the dominant pattern throughout. And so to me, that's the perception that's trying to be created. So my question would be, the presentation suggests that this site is surrounded by similar multifamily development. However, the zoning map shows most of the surrounding neighborhoods remains R5. And I'm just wondering if staff or the developer could clarify how this proposal fits in with the broader zoning context.
I think I'll give that to the applicant. Please go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
I merely took a map and demonstrated where the 3- and 4-story multifamily buildings were, and our project falls between those various items. So if there was a known designation, if there was a node in an urban design planning study that said, do these blocks have a series of multifamily buildings of a similar nature? They certainly do. We're not extending that. We are certainly, I feel, falling within it. but it is an expression. If I looked at the duplexes and triplexes further along Fair Street, or if I looked at single-family homes across the road or around, they're also in the community, yes. I just merely stated that we have a series of buildings within this neighborhood of a similar nature, and we are between them.
Thank you. Councillor Britt, anything
I have
else?
2 more to go, Mayor. Thank you for your indulgence. The report suggests that the building height is comparable to the nearby building at 2181 Haltane Street, stating that their building would be about 1.56 meters higher. And you emphasize that difference is minor. However, I think that's a bit misleading, as the Haltane building is 3 stories at street level and the proposed building is 5 stories, including a rooftop level, and an additional amount of height for the elevator, etc., which to me adds quite a bit in the perceived height and massing of the building bulk. So the question would be, the presentation compares overall building height to the neighboring building on Haltane Street. I'm just looking for some clarification of how the proposed 5-story building compares in terms of perceived scale and massing relative to the surrounding 3- and 4-story buildings, please.
So there was some of that in the presentation. You wish just for a more broad, just sort of overview from the applicant? Over to you, Mr. Hardcastle.
The building at 2181 Haltane Street, which is 3 stories from that streetscape, we have a 3-story portion of our wing extending towards Eastdowne and a 3-story portion of a wing extending to Fair Street. A setback on both of those wings is a 4th story. The calling of the 5th story, because we have a ceiling in an elevator lobby, I think it's unfair to call it a 5th floor, but it is an occupied area. But it doesn't cast shadows, it's not fully enclosed. And in the cross-section, you'll see that I also drew a person standing on the sidewalk, and you can see that their sight line from across the road on Fair Street, where it clips the parapet of the 3rd floor, the parapet of the 4th floor, the top of the occupied elevator lobby on the rooftop deck, and then the actual elevator shaft itself, you will see that this is a very carefully planned plane of setbacks to, as much as possible, make sure that we are not overbearing on the neighborhood, that we are somewhat similar to the neighborhood. In many of the vintage 4-story buildings in the neighborhood, they don't have the benefit of those setbacks that we're able to create now on this one.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. So I think this is probably more for staff. I just wanted to make sure that I have the correct understanding of the proposed zoning ask. So to me, the proposed zone allows for more density than existing apartment zones. The report compares the proposal to 2 existing apartment zones, RM3 HD and RM4, but the proposed comprehensive development zone actually allows greater density than those zones. So RM3 is 1.44, RM4 is 1.0, and the proposed CD zone is 1.6. So is it correct to say that the proposed building is denser than the standard apartment zones already in the zoning bylaw? And I only ask this because the developer and I believe staff framed the project as being similar in scale to the nearby apartment buildings, but I think that the zoning comparison actually shows that there's a greater density on a smaller lot. And I think that's because the CD zone is being custom written for this project. So just, is this proposed building, is it denser than the standard apartment zones already in the zoning bylaw?
To Mr. Green.
Through your worship, essentially we've crafted a site-specific zone for this building design and for this this lot. As we mentioned in the staff report, many of our current multifamily zones are from several years ago and don't necessarily represent modern building designs and in terms of ceiling height, as Peter was just explaining. And so we felt in this case that a CD zone was a better way of capturing the zoning elements of this design rather than using a stock zone.
And I would have had a similar question around setbacks, but I'll leave that one. So my last question would be, so you basically, the developer, through you, Mayor, repeatedly uses the phrase, if not here, then where? And to me, that's kind of a rhetorical argument, not a planning one. My answer to this might be obvious, but it would be to build in the areas that the OCP already is designated for higher density. So I'm not sure if staff have this information at their fingertips. However, would you be able to identify how many areas within the OCP that were specifically designated to accommodate higher density housing that may be more appropriate for apartment scale developments like this? Do we know offhand how many might be better? I mean, it's a great design of a building. Are there better places where it could fit?
I'm asking,
How many places across the municipality would a building like this be able to be built?
maybe a tight, hard question to answer off the top of your head, but.
Yeah, I don't have that to hand in terms of the number of sites. Obviously, through the update to the OCP in 2025, Council did identify or designate certain sites along Cabra Bay Road for multi-unit residential development, as well as certain areas of that were identified in the 2014 OCP around the Beach Drive, Esplanade area.
And parts of Henderson Road as well, so there's some. Okay, I'm going to go to others for questions now. I have Councillor Patterson. Anybody else? Questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I would just like to do a follow-up, if I may, on some of Councillor Braithwaite's questions, and concerning, of course, the car share. And I just want clarification. The car share membership, is that membership offered one membership per suite, or is it does it consider, because some of the units are larger and probably more able to to accommodate certainly more than one person. So I just wanted to know if the car share membership is one per suite, and if that continues with a change in tenancy.
These are, I believe, are assigned one per unit, and they are for the unit. So regardless of the number of tenancy changes that would occur, we would be legally bound to provide that many of units. It's also important to note that there is an equivalency that I do believe is also mentioned in the parking study report, that the provision of a car share program in that area has the equivalent value of 77 memberships. So others being able to pick up or drop off a car. Mallory may be able to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just remembering a very exact number from her study.
Those, I'll give you the opportunity to correct if wrong.
You, through the mayor, building off of that point, it is correct that when you purchase a car share vehicle, the provision of 70 Moto memberships are typically provided with the purchase of a vehicle. So considering that there is only 16 units for this proposed development, there is an opportunity to perhaps have multiple memberships per unit, just working with Moto to get that figured out.
Thank you for that. Councillor Patterson, was there anything else? I do not see other hands for questions. Is there anybody else who has questions, either for staff or the applicant? Thank you. I just want to express my appreciation to the applicant for the provision of the presentation. It helped clarify a number of points. We are then going to come back to this table and seek direction from the council. The recommendation here, the option number one at least, is to advance this. I'll take that as a motion, or for some wishes, I kind of prefer to talk to a motion, a positive motion, so that the vote for and against is a little bit clearer in that piece. Councillor Watson?
Yes, I will move the recommendation, the staff recommendation that council directs staff to prepare necessary bylaw amendments for the proposed development applications for the property, as outlined in the report we have in front of us.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. I'm happy to take discussion, debate around this matter. Please go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank the applicant for going away after the January meeting and coming back, and I think thoughtfully, not frivolously, but quite thoughtfully, considering all the points that were raised, and I think addressing them, and I appreciate that extra work and attention to detail and the updated transportation demand analysis. And so I think we're back here again with a project that actually addressed the issues that we asked to be looked at the January meeting. And And what we have in front of us, I think, is a really strong proposal to add rental housing in our community. I think I would note that this is the only application for rental housing additions, multi-unit rental housing additions in this term of council. We are looking at a planning context that certainly in our OCP identifies a whole bunch of policies that this project does address. The project, the location is very well served by transit. I saw two different numbers for the walk score of this building. I saw 81 in the report, and then I saw 79 on the slide. But I think we've got a location here which is very, very well served by all the things in the community around it, and makes a great location. I did want to I'll speak again a little bit later, but in terms of motivating a little bit, I think that one of the concerns that has been raised by the community is that somehow in approving this, we are kind of deep sixing our discussion that we had around the OCP. But in some ways, I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about what the OCP is. It is a policy document. It's not a zoning document. And anybody who wanted to come in and do a multi-unit building of 5 or more units right now would have to go through this process. So the fact that we are considering this application, that's our obligation, and we have to take it in the context of all the other things that we value in that OCP. And I think this project just addresses so many of them. And I'll speak to, I'll probably talk a little bit again later, but I just think that we should move this forward because we need the housing. I think about the types of folks who would be happy to come and live here, and I'm so struck by its proximity to the Royal Jubilee, which is a major housing demand generator. And I think about 2 nurses or a respiratory technologist and a nurse sharing a 2-bedroom apartment. And although again, this is not going to be there's no subsidy attached to this isn't going to be affordable, it's still very valuable housing for professionals who serve our community. And I'd just love to see it move forward to the point that we can have at least a public hearing to hear further input from the community about it. So I'd like to see it move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Others? Councillor Appleton, seconder, then Councillor Green.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, no, definitely for some of the same reasons that I enumerated last time in support of the proposal that's in front of us. All of the qualities that make a location suitable or appropriate for a multifamily dwelling remain the same here. As has been noted, there's very, very good association with amenities and community features, with transportation, all of the things that people want to see us manage the community for, as far as manage parking issues, manage how people are going to get around, make nice, easily accessible dwelling units for the community where you don't have to walk far for stuff. These qualities and these locations in the community are what they are, irrespective of what is proposed. There's been some deliberate work done with this submission to take steps to address massing and parking. I think there's a very strong transportation demand management here responding to the significant concern raised about parking in the neighborhood. I think there's been a lot of proactive work done here. As has been raised, the significance of rental housing is very important. We've not added any new rental housing in many years in Oak Bay, and dedicated rental housing is critical for many folks who live in our community. And I will note that I'm glad that it came up that we were talking about where the multifamily unit locations are in the new OCP. And I'll just make the note, and just for those who are concerned about OCP amendments and how this relates to the existing OCP, that the recently passed OCP so significantly restricts the amount of land available for multi-unit housing that anytime multifamily or multi-unit housing is going to get proposed in Oak Bay, in the vast majority of locations, it will require rezoning and it will require a CD type zone like this, which is a spot zone, which is exactly, I understand the concern from the community because I heard the same thing during the OCP discussions, that spot zones and CDs were not something that they generally wanted to see repeated. So I understand that concern. But because the OCP provides so compact and so limited amount of multifamily space, this is the inevitable result of that, as I see it. So this, council then has it in front of them to consider each individual application on its merits, and I believe on balance of factors, given where it's located and given what's provided in this case, that this has merit to proceed to public hearing. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I have Councillor Green, Braithwaite, Patterson. I'm going to assume Smart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the applicant and to staff for the reports and the presentation. I will not be supporting this motion, and as you know, I voted to deny this application the last time, and so the changes that I was looking for are not substantial. I am still concerned about the integrity of the OCP, and regardless of what my colleague has mentioned, this is the second rental application we've had this term, and the first one we approved, and that was at the corner of McNeil and, I'm sorry, Central and St. Patrick.
That was the last term of council. That was the previous term of council.
Well, it was completed this term anyway. And then, yes, I'm concerned about the OCP integrity, but the OCP reflects what this community asked us to do. It isn't that we purposely restricted or denied land for building multifamily. We listened to the community at the time. In this proposal, the parking is the same, and I am very concerned about the parking because for residents, this parking study was done on one day only, in the morning and the evening. I think if I was looking for a parking study, I would be measuring over a period of days to provide as much information as I could gain. It is a heavily traveled area for pedestrians, and there is no mention of pedestrian safety other than that little node, the football node at the pedestrian crosswalk. I believe that's at Haltane and Eastdowne. I don't think that is a substantial enough reason to not be concerned about pedestrian safety. And this is a heavily traveled area, Haltane, because of, Eastdowne, because of the school proximity. So pedestrian safety is a huge issue. The height is the same. The unit numbers of the building are the same. And I think my understanding was that we would be looking at a reduced number of units, a reduced height, perhaps 3-story. And remember, this neighborhood is not against density. But I would say if I'm looking at page 6 of the presentation, I would say that in this neighborhood alone, their cup runneth over when it comes to density and density massing. And in fact, when we talk about transition, yes, the older buildings are, they do form a block, but I'm looking again at page 6 of the presentation. There is a green space, essentially green trees and shrubs that provide a transition space between the high-density older buildings and single-family dwellings behind it on Fair Street and at the corner of Haltane and Eastdowne. My concern about this proposal is that the house on Haltane closest the house on Eastdowne closest to Haltane to the north, I believe, will be completely orphaned by this proposal, and that will disconnect it not only from its neighbors but from its community at that location. Again, the tree canopy provides a significant buffer between the older 4-story buildings and the single-family dwellings on Fair Street and Haltane, and it's important. Someone mentioned a large tree that shadows, and in fact the shadows would be greater than the building. But that is part of the tree canopy, and that is to be a natural shadowing and a natural impact. It is not a large building. We have received over 30 letters for tonight against this proposal from the community. They're not against density, they're against this specific proposal. And so I will not be supporting this motion for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I move now to Councillor Braithwaite, then Patterson, and then Smart.
Thanks so much, Mayor. I also want to thank staff and applicants for the work they've gone into trying to revise this proposal and for responding to some of Councillor's earlier comments. So, however, even though it's a great design, and I still say it's a beautiful building, I do continue to have concerns about whether this form of development is the right fit for this site. When we adopted the new official community plan, we made deliberate decisions about where different forms of housing should occur. This property was not designated for multi-unit apartment development. Approving a site-specific amendment so soon after adopting the OCP raises questions about the consistency and integrity of the plan, and the predictability it's meant to provide for residents, property owners, and developers. While I strongly support adding housing in Oak Bay, I believe that the type and scale of housing matter just as much as the number of units. Moving from a duplex to a 5-story, 16-unit apartment building represents a significant jump in density for a site designated for low-density residential. A smaller scale, ground-oriented project, such as a townhouse or a multiplex development, would align more closely with the intent of the OCP and fit more comfortably within the surrounding neighborhood and be accepted by the neighborhood. One of the challenges with approving site-specific OCP amendments is that it can create expectations for similar treatment elsewhere. So if council approves a 16-unit apartment building in an area designated for lower density housing, it may be difficult to explain why similar properties nearby should not receive the same consideration. And as I've mentioned already, the developer uses the phrase, if not here, then where? And my answer again is to build in areas that the OCP had already designated for higher density. I also really remain concerned about the significant parking reduction proposed, particularly given the existing pressures on on-street parking in this area, and there are many of them. So for me, it's not about whether we add housing, it's about whether this is the right form of housing in the right location. And the argument that we need housing, that's very true, we do need housing. But if this application were not approved, would the district still have sufficient capacity within the areas already designated for higher density to meet the provincial housing targets? And the answer is yes, we would. So, I want to thank all of the residents also who wrote in to let us know their thoughts on this proposal. It truly helps to hear from you. One of the letter writers ended their letter with the phrase, "It would be nice to see us grow together," and I totally agree with this. I believe that there are areas already identified in the OCP for higher density, and that's where we should focus this type of development. And so for those reasons, I will not be supporting the application. Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, and then Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I will not be supporting the application as it's presented, but I do thank the applicant and the designers and certainly Oak Bay staff for looking more closely at the original application and coming back with some amendments. As I listen to my colleagues around the table, and this is an area that I traverse regularly, so I know it quite well. And my colleagues around the table talk about it being in an area where more densification is required, and it's a great place because of all the amenities around it. While all of that is true, it is very much a family-oriented neighborhood. I think that although the applicant and the consultant have addressed the parking, it doesn't really reflect typical conditions that one might experience. And that is because the neighborhood, being a family neighborhood, close to a high school where there are many activities, and close to fortunately, a very active church congregation at St. Patrick's Church, it does experience assembly-type demands on a frequent basis. And that those demands place unusual rises in the use of parking in the area. And so to look at it on one day in the morning and in the evening is not necessarily an indicator of how the neighborhood functions. And this is a neighborhood that embraces density and activity. And I know that because I've experienced it. And they've done so for many years. But the concerns about the neighborhood's capacity to, it is already our highest density area in the district. And so there are concerns about the capacity to absorb more density, and I find it reasonable. It's not unwarranted. I mean, I think that it's common sense thinking because they live there and they do experience and they understand how things flow in the district. And I think that's something that perhaps we need to look at more closely. And it's something that the Advisory Planning Commission talked about in their remarks, that the transportation demand should not just be done for a single building, but it needed to be done for the area as a whole. And I think at the time that this survey was taken, one of the buildings in the area was vacant. So but it's a great family neighborhood. I was hoping that the height and mass of the structure would perhaps come back to council in a more subdued manner and one that offered a more reasonable transition from the multi-residential buildings to single-family units directly adjacent to the site and surrounding the site. It's a great-looking building, and certainly there are other locations in Oak Bay that I would be fully supportive of having it. But it's trying to make the site fit the building rather than getting the building to fit the site and the neighborhood. And so for those reasons, I will not support the application that's before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Please go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to share my reasons for supporting this application proceeding to public hearing. This project, as we've heard around the table, I think everyone agrees, would potentially provide much needed rental homes for our community. And it provides those rental homes in an area that will be close to transit and active transportation routes, with walkability to 2 close-by village centers with amenities. And these climate-friendly planning approaches to siting new housing were planning strategies that were supported by the majority of our community in our OCP public engagement processes. This project has followed the guidance of a parking and traffic study while being a leader in low-carbon transportation options, one of our council priorities. I believe it's important to value providing homes and new neighbors over places for cars. The project is sited contextually near another 4-story apartment building and is on a corner site, and has seen design changes, particularly thoughtful massing changes that reflect site fit and community feedback. And for these reasons, I would like to see this design proceed to public hearing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smart. I'll speak on this. I really appreciate hearing all the context of council. I have struggled with this one. I'm not going to lie. I think that I think recognizing there's OCP is not written in stone. It is there to give guidelines. And in fact, I would say personally, I think the approach, a slightly more conservative approach, and not pre-sizing everything, gives us the opportunity to have public hearings and things on these pieces. Otherwise, by provincial law, we're not even allowed to take written submissions on applications. So I don't want to presume that because it's not in the OCP, it can't be done. And of course, this application predates the current OCP in any case, so it was always intended to be an OCP amendment approach. I do think that these kind of lots, the corner lots, slightly larger than standard lots, are worthy of considering higher density on them. And I support the intention and the approach here taken of allowing for less parking than is strictly required given the transportation demand pieces. So for me, this is really coming down to is the specific ask in the specific lot on this one, is the massing ask is the move to a more multifamily approach rather than the transitional approach. I think that was probably more considered in the OCP, validated on this one. And I was looking at, in the ask to go back and work on these things, I struggled with how it could be done within the 4 stories. I'm not going to lie. I really think that the design work of stepping back the 4th story, those pieces have done an enormous amount to mitigate the visual impact of this building. The choice of design and materials, the L shape, those aspects. I couldn't, frankly, I would have no comments on how to improve this in any way, shape, or form. But we are still here with a 4-story building on a corner lot that is an R5 lot, and so, or an R4 lot, I can't remember which one, but a residential lot. So for me, this is really down to, is that height massing in pieces in this particular situation just sort of cross the threshold of that. And I, at the end of the day, I don't feel like it does. I think it's so close. I think within the original design of this, it's done everything it possibly can. But that 4-story on this building, I think it just is going to, if we're looking sort of for transitional in that stretch of pieces, the 3 stories, which is allowed in that area, I think is the right mix. And you know, at the end of the day, as I went through my analysis, and again, I really appreciate the presentation because it made me rethink a lot of my aspects of what was reasonable or not. This really struck me that I think there was a comment made earlier in the open portion by Ms. Fournette about the need for us to kind of consider our zoning and pieces on this. And I think this is a really good example to me. I think we've talked about and we heard feedback from the public a lot about wanting to see in all areas some slightly higher density on corner lots and some larger lots. That is an appropriate piece, and to ask anybody, a homeowner or a developer, to sort of go through an OCP amendment process, which is a very long and expensive process, I don't think is the right process. I think we should be looking at our bid block and the impact of the 4-plexes and looking at shifting the zoning to make it more viable and attractive for the density to happen more on corner lots. But this, to me, I think it's as close as it could possibly get to allow a 4-story unit, a building on a corner lot amongst other single family. I couldn't suggest any other improvements to the design, which is why I don't feel comfortable sending it back. But to me, this just doesn't quite meet I just can't quite support the massing on this particular site. Councillor Watson, you indicated you wish to speak for a second time. Did you wish to?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. I would be really, really, really dismayed if this project was not given an opportunity to go to the public, our broader public, for discussion and presentation, discussion and feedback. I think that first of all, I just want to comment on concerns around massing and actually how that's perceived from street level. I think everybody at this table has said that this is a very attractive building. Those things that come up because there's 5 feet of difference or 2 feet of difference or these little differences in the floor plate heights are imperceptible when you're standing back across the street or even at the building and looking at it. It will read as a beautiful addition, a beautiful architectural addition to our neighborhoods. And so I challenge the councillors who are looking at those kind of metrics and seeing the parts as opposed to the whole. I think this is a lovely building. I also just want to remind my council colleagues that the OCP is driving some other really important policy directions which this project addresses. Active transportation, climate change. We've got a site here that's going to exceed our tree canopy. I mean, not immediately, but really meet those goals as well. And is consistent with the regional growth strategy, which we have an obligation to be supporting and which we generally are not doing in this community. So we're looking for more housing choice. As I said, and I'll go back and say it again, in this term of council, we have not approved a multi-unit residential building. We've got secondary suites that people are putting in their homes that they may or may not rent, but we have not created any new rental housing in our community, and it's coming up for almost 4 years. Our OCP, as it was adopted in December, does not negate the fact that we are obliged, we have housing targets that we've been given to meet, 5-year and then a 20-year framework, and we have now seen in a provincial budget, which is pretty dire, and in already ensuing discussions at UVic, that our chances of achieving those through the Cedar Hill Corners development are getting very, very less likely. Here we have in front of us 16 units of beautiful housing which can be built. And we have a responsibility as an elected council to meet those obligations. And here we've got a willing developer who's taken the risks and a lot of time to work intricately through this proposal to bring something of value to this community. And I think this council needs to get a grip on that. We have housing obligations, and I don't know how you can do better than this, actually, in a small development. Another thing that I didn't notice from, we've got an updated transportation and parking study done for us. The actual traffic volume generation from this is to address Councillor Patterson's concern that pedestrians are somehow at risk because this building will go in place. Traffic volume or trip generation from this project is almost imperceptible. If 4 houses up the road adds 2 units or 3 units, which they can do to create whatever, we're going to get out of that half of the trip generation that this project is going. No, sorry, that's not correct. I should state that more accurately. For any time somebody adds a secondary suite or uses their as of right ability now to put 4 units on a lot, trips are being generated. We've got a calculations, and we're not requiring those owners to do these studies. We've got a professional study here that relies on professional standards for doing those calculations, and I don't think we should be trying to second guess what those are and how often you need to go out and count parking spaces and what parking utilization is. I think we've got good information that suggests that the amount of traffic generated by this project is de minimis, and that what's being proposed to accommodate it on the site is quite satisfactory. So I see those things as kind of excuses and red herrings that some councillors throw out to avoid doing really what the right thing is, in my view, which is to accept some beautiful new housing into our community, welcome others into the neighbourhood, which is already well served which is already well placed to serve them. So I will be very, very disappointed if this does not go forward to public hearing.
Thank you. Other hands have popped up. I do want to. We do have some time limitations on this, so just if we're going to make comments, just for making new points, and I'll go back around to the table. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. I'll make very, very brief points. One of the reasons we haven't approved any rental housing is we haven't had any applications apart from this one. That's the first thing. So it is impossible for us as a municipality to generate applications. Secondly, the original genesis of the whole housing movement by this province was to provide affordable housing. That hasn't happened, and in fact, in the last budget, they have dropped their affordable housing program. It will no longer be funded. They've dropped their daycare program at $10 a day. That will not be funded. It's put on pause. If we're trying to encourage families and we're trying to encourage middle income and fixed income residents to move to Oak Bay, that kind of action makes it very difficult. And quite frankly, the affordable housing dream is elusive. It hasn't happened. We have built, I don't know how many Plex buildings. Each unit is selling between 1.3 and 1.6 million per unit. And my understanding is, as of a month ago, I don't believe any of those units have sold. So it's a really difficult time. It isn't about red herrings and red flags. It's about the fact that reality is reality. And our community, this community in particular, has told us over and over again, they are willing to work with this developer. They are willing to take some density, but not this scale of density. And I think that's a legitimate concern on their part. None of us at this table will have to live with this density. We will not have to live on Fair Street. We will not have to live on Haltane or Eastdowne. we won't be coping with the traffic management issues. We won't be coping with the pedestrian issues day in and day out. And we won't be coping with the reality of that kind of density on a very small lot to the single family dwellings that are adjacent. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I have Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I would just would like to remind the other councillors around the table, I certainly didn't forget it, but we have, in fact, in this council term, approved a multi-residential strata. All of these were in the Prospect Place area. I don't know how we could forget all of those meetings. A multi-residential strata, a multi-residential rental, and then duplexes with secondary suites, all in a fairly small area, but it did take some time, but it was approved, and I think that the rental units on Beach Drive will be very well appreciated. But also to the comment about pedestrians, and it's not just pedestrian traffic in this area that I'm concerned about. It really, you have to experience, I think, a neighborhood at a variety of times and on occasions in order to get a feel for it. And this is a very densely built out area as it stands. And despite all of the density and the traffic problems and the lack of sometimes pedestrian infrastructure, the neighborhood has found a way to work and be neighborly and embrace all of these things. And so, and I do so appreciate that they have done that. But given the schools, Carnarvon Park being in the vicinity, St. Patrick's Church, these are all very active components that you might not experience in other locations within Oak Bay, but it does happen in this neighborhood. But there comes a point where you have to, I think, stand back and say, if we are to do more and we are to do it well, then we have to analyze both what we have and what we want to have in the future. And the application as it's put forward doesn't do that for me right now. I will also add that there was another application that was for Oak Bay Avenue for a multi-unit strata building that has never come to fruition and is just pretty much a derelict property. And so despite some of the applications that this council and other councils around the region have approved, it doesn't guarantee that the development will occur either. So, but I think that our duty as a council is not only to the future potential residents to Oak Bay, but to our existing residents and making sure that the changes we make to the neighborhoods where their homes are located there today need to continue to work today and into the future. And so I look forward to continuing to work with district staff and to the development community and to the residents of Oak Bay to, in fact, keep the community so that it is still a community that we want to embrace. This is a very desirable community. So I won't accept that over the decades so much has been done wrong that we have to quickly eliminate and move forward. I think a lot of things have been done right, and I think we should just continue along that vein. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Just for public's interest, the derelict property that you mentioned is actually 2326 Oak Bay Avenue is being built now, so it is progressing, as I understand it. So, any other discussion before I call the question? Go ahead, Councillor Smart and Appleton, and then I'll.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that I do believe we bear responsibility at this table for whether or not development applications come forward to us. When we have an OCP and we don't rezone properties and implement that OCP and provide those easier opportunities for housing to be built, and when we take so long to review applications, we are contributing to the process of housing not getting built in this community. So I take it as a serious piece of work that we need to do at this table to provide the vision, to provide the implementation, and to actually set up the framework to encourage applications to come forward to build the housing that our residents need, because it is the number one issue that people are talking about, and we're not providing the housing people need.
Appleton, yours just
Yeah, thanks very much, Your Worship. You know, I heard so many times during the OCP process, over and over and over again, about the concern about spot zoning and about CD zones, and how people really wanted to see that certainty and have predictability in zoning. And again, because the OCP limits the area for multifamily so much, like we've had an extensive debate on this, and even venturing into the philosophical. This conversation is inevitable to happen again and again and again, because these types of developments, we create no certainty for developments, we create no framework for development of this type in the community. So if there is a sense that this development does not move forward, and that we will indicate by that this type of development will not come again, it will. This presages the future for these types of developments. And if we then consider a development like this, and if we almost universally agree on the quality of design, how it might fit within the neighborhood, the thoughtful response in terms of design, and make comments to the effect of that nothing could be improved in this development, but it just doesn't fit in the development, and then ultimately it does not proceed, then we are not creating the environment that we are, in my view, obligated to do to create the housing that this community needs. There is no potential for a developer to come forward and present something of good quality with a degree of confidence that it will be considered and advanced, even on those very few properties in the community that are actually zoned for such a purpose. So if this process feels uncomfortable and feels like it isn't an appropriate process, or feels like something that is too much time invested, we're going to be back here again. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, I might as well, since everybody else has. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is an OCP conflict. The new OCP designates this area as residential, which would support multiplexes, townhouses, duplexes, and up to 4 units per lot. This proposal is obviously a lot more than that. Really, what the community was looking for, I think, was more like 4 to 6 townhouses, and that would be really much closer to what the OCP intent was. The density jump, it's a maximum of 4 units right now. They're proposing 16 units, that's 4 times the density. There's a parking shortfall, the reliance on car share and e-bikes, and it's just, I think it's just not really what this community is looking for right now in this spot. And there is an obligation, and there's an obligation to the current residents as well as the future residents, and I think that's what we're looking at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Thank you. I'm going to call the question. I really want to keep our focus on this application. I think that is the piece of it. But I also think, I appreciate I think there's worth having a little bit of this broader conversation around about the OCP and where we want development. I do take the, I do take the new official community plan as a guiding factor, and I appreciate this application came forward before the current OCP, and I really did want to make sure we gave it the full due diligence on the piece of it. But I think to the points raised about this has to happen, and these things will come forward. I think the direction given by the OCP is that there's approximately 8 kilometers of street frontage that allows for townhomes and multifamily in the community. That is it's essentially setting the intention. It doesn't preclude other applications from coming forward. I do think we should be clarifying our infill housing areas within our zoning and even within the OCP. But I also think that is, to the point made about where we want it and where it should go, I do think that is essentially the guiding document at this point for people looking for building. And those are, I think, quite thoughtfully larger lots and lots that are capable of having some consolidation to help guide that. But back to this application, which is in front of us tonight, I'm going to, I think, prepare to call the question. So the motion on the floor, just so we haven't forgotten it, is to direct this forward for public hearing If it passes, it'll project for development of bylaws and public hearing. If it fails, it will fail at this point, and that will conclude this specific application of this lot. So, that clarity, all those in favor of the motion and those opposed, I have Councillor Patterson, Braithwaite, myself, and Councillor Green opposed. That motion does fail. Thank you very much to the applicants and for that. So, yeah, we always just like to make sure, because there's often people with various different opinions and viewpoints here, and I just want to make sure all of our applicants and applicants, so thank you very much. Moving now to item 7.3, we have...
Your Worship, I'd like to request a recess for 3 minutes while people file out.
Sure. That's, why don't we do that? We don't have to have a formal recess. We'll just take a breather here and let people leave the room. We'll give you another break. All right, as the room is clearing out, we're still at our tables. I'm going to just, thank you very much, come back to this table. 7.3, our workforce plan for Community Building and Planning Services Department. We are obviously getting to this a little later than I was thinking that we would tonight. There's no ask for direction here, but I think worthwhile for us to just kind of have some awareness of what's being contemplated over the coming years. Mr. Bowl, would you like to provide a brief? Oh, sorry, Ms. Hunt. I'll give it to you first, and then to Mr. Bowl. My apologies. I even had a note to say that, and I didn't do it. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, I'd just like to make some introductory comments before I turn it over to Mr. Bowl. This report is the first in a series of planned workforce planning reports that the directors will be bringing forward to Council for information over the next several months. These reports are intended to provide Council with a glimpse into the longer-term staffing plans for departments based on factors such as the growing volume and complexity of programs or services, evolving work plans, and advancing the long list of Council priority projects or outstanding resolutions. Council has noted that it would be useful to have a longer-term planning horizon related to staff resources, and since Community Building and Planning has been doing significant work analyzing their resource capacity for Council priority projects and forecasting development and permit volumes, they're the first out of the gate with this type of report. So while you may have questions for Andre on his particular department, it would also be useful for staff to hear whether this format meets Council's needs in terms of this type of report, as this is what we would be preparing for other departments moving forward. And I'll just turn it over to Director Bowl.
Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. A few comments on my part. So this report recaps an attached workforce plan. It provides an overview of current staffing levels and the roles in the Community Building and Planning Department, and discusses two challenges. The first challenge relates to building permit wait times, and it's being addressed by having new staff, and I'm happy to report we've found our third person for this team, and they're being trained up, and I expect that the timelines will continue to go down. And the second challenge for development review workload is also going to be addressed shortly with additional staff that was previously approved. We've been able in that area to maintain the timelines by relying on consultant support, but now that it has become clear that the higher number of applications has continued throughout 2025, we have now filled the previously approved position. In terms of future needs, we anticipate an ongoing transition to higher volumes of development applications as well as building permits as a result of the new programs that the district has created. There's also significant interest in initiatives that require Council priority project levels of effort as well. And the workforce plan outlines tentative staffing needs for this and other things. With regards to Council priority projects, the workforce plan outlines an investment option for a manager community planning for 2026. And this could expand the capacity for future projects and would also relieve current pressures on the director and the deputy. Further into the future, looking at the 5 years ahead, we foresee the need for an additional planner, potentially in 2027, a building official, potentially in 2028, and potentially a manager building and bylaws in 2030. However, in the world of development activity, a lot can change, and these tentative staff needs will need to be further evaluated in the coming years as more information becomes available regarding their actual need. That concludes my introduction. The report is here for your information, and Mr. Green and myself are available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I'll go this over to the staff. I'm going to ask people to keep their questions short, and just because I want to make sure we get opportunity to get through any questions that we have and under the other aspects on the thing. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff, thank you for the report. I think it's a good start in the process of trying to enlighten council members and the public as to what the work is and what the workload is. So I thank you for that. I think it's helpful to myself, at least as a councillor. What I am trying to understand, though, from the report is it does refer to permitting delays attributable to staff turnover. And the wait time for that, and there would be a reduction. What isn't abundantly clear is if those positions were not vacant and they were full, then how would the experience change? And I guess I'm trying to rationalize additional costs and what benefits that will provide, either in terms of efficiency or value to the community. So those are the two areas that were just not quite clear to me, and perhaps Director Bull could elaborate a bit.
Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Yes, so the current building team has 3 positions, and we had all 3 filled up until June, but then we lost 2, kind of in the scope of a month, so that was a big hit, although we were already at higher timelines before, and that had to do with the spike in volume. But that said, we have made some changes. A portion of building permit review that is sometimes also done by planners has moved over to the planning team. And with that, a team of 3 should be able to, with the current building permit volume, to maintain reasonable timelines. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Councillor Appleton, briefly.
Thank you, Worship. And I'm not sure whether Mr. Bull's available or able to answer this question, but through you, I'm just wondering, I do like the format and I do appreciate the update, and sort of the projection is certainly useful. And so I look forward to seeing other departments represented as well. I guess my overall question is, a strategic HR plan has been mooted at various times, and for various reasons, we've kind of been, able to advance certain parts of sort of strategic HR management, and then not, depending on what the, where the organization is at. So I'm just kind of wondering, does this theoretically key into a larger strategic HR process?
Ms. Hunt?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, the new director of HR will be bringing forward a report to council to talk about a strategic HR plan and the various elements of that plan. There was a 4-year plan that wrapped up, I think, last year, and so she's looking at renewing that and the types of initiatives that HR would be undertaking.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mayor. I have 3 really quick questions. First, I'm just wondering, if we chose not to add the Manager of Community Planning position, do we know which council priority projects would likely be delayed with not adding that position?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. There would be no delay. So the current collection of council priority project is right-sized for the current capacity. This would open the door for potentially more work. Thanks.
I like that answer. Thank you. And then I know that several of the proposed positions are expected to be funded through the increasing development revenue. And how sensitive is this funding model to a slowdown in development activity? Because I know there's some concern that there might be a slowdown in development activity.
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And through you, Yeah, it would reduce the ability to recover costs. At the same time, it would also help us with information in the future if those positions are really needed. And we would, if there would be a slowdown, we would probably hit the pause button on the ones that are currently in the 5-year plan and see if that need actually materializes, or see if there's other things we can do to address the need that we do have. Thanks.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, the reason I asked that question wasn't because of, as I heard to my right, that we just didn't put it through a development. It was because of in the report, it does show that building permits are down. So that was the reason I asked that question. My last question would be, if development activity continues to increase, do we anticipate similar staffing pressures in the engineering, fire, or other departments that supports the development review?
Mr. Bull?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for that question. I hadn't mentioned it in my introduction, but this workforce report zooms in only on the department, and that's not entirely fair, because there are, as noted in the report, other staff in other departments that support development review, building permit review, and that extends to a fire safety officer in fire, and a deputy chief sometimes, the parks arborist in parks and recreation, and their manager, the engineering technologist, sometimes a director of engineering. And definitely those teams also feel the pressure of increasing demand. But in comparison to our staff, they're not necessarily full-time on those review tasks, but it does have an incremental effect as well that they are planning for, I believe. So thanks.
Thank you very much. I just have one question before we get the motion to receive this report. Again, I agree. I think the format of this is quite good. I really appreciated the statistical information behind it. And I think probably necessary for any new asks is to kind of make sure that there's a case made. My question sort of goes more to, are there systems that we can put in place so that a lot of these permits, which are residential existing building and some of these more sort of probably more renovation oriented and smaller permits, we can either automate those, simplify them, sort of take them off of staff's hands in ways using some technology or using just with council approval, assuming some risk there that maybe they don't get inspected or other things that might limit the burden on staff and allow staff to focus on the more complicated applications where the skill sets are more valued. Is there any aspect of that as we're going through the optimization process that we might consider some of those approaches as well? Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, indeed, the optimization project looks at, there's a couple of digitization efforts where both building permit or development application processes can be automated to some extent, application intake. On the other end of the review process, there are ways to streamline certain types of applications. We could, in certain cases, rely more on a qualified professional, perhaps, or be more flexible in where we do require an inspection versus whether it's maybe optional. And another thing that I note in my report is that there is increasingly artificial intelligence tools available that are able to do some of the review of building permits. And that's something else in the future to look into and monitor what those products are offering over time. Right now it's still early days, but that's definitely something in a couple of years could be much further ahead than it is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Bull. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I just had one question. It might be for Ms. Lachance, actually, and it just has to do with in the use of the growing communities funding. In the proposal or the staff report, it's identified as a potential source of funding for the senior plan or housing delivery for 2 years. I just wondered, absent that or even including that, how much, given the other things that grant is assigned, that funding is assigned to, when do we run out of that money? Is it 2028, with or without this? Or just talk to that.
little cough in the background.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't sure if you wanted to change direction on that, but yeah, happy to answer that question through you, Your Worship. So the Growing Communities funds, as you note, were originally provided, and anticipated end date for those spending on those funds would be 2028. You may recall that then a sizable amount had been allocated to the Housing Action Program, which has a number of projects that are in part completed, some still underway. So the original funding allocated by council is still allocated to those projects, and that is some of the funding that is being referred to in this report. There are other decision points coming ahead for council regarding Growing Communities funds, primarily because the Housing Action Plan received other grant funding sources. So I'd have to get back to you with maybe a revised projection on when that funding would be used up, but I would like to come back on the future decisions first.
Thank you. Maybe just seek a motion then to receive the report. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bull and team, for putting that together. We now have what was 8.2 is now 7.4, which is the grant need application adjudication. Ms. LaChance, you just come off the question.
Yes.
Over to this. We have the summary report here of the averaging. Please provide us a brief introduction, and maybe for the benefit of the public, just as to what brought us here.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a brief introduction to this report. And a brief introduction, I am joined this evening by Darcy O'Neill, our Manager of Financial Planning. He is the co-author of the report and is going to support Council and myself in this report before you. This report is follow-up to the process undertaken by Committee of the Whole on February 17th to receive applications and hear presentations. In accordance with the council-approved grants and aid process, staff have since compiled the average council member assigned values and have reported those back to council for consideration. Based on the averaging methodology, the recommended allocation totals $63,500, and that is within the allowable available discretionary funding of $63,810. And of course, that is net. That does reserve the 10% reserve amount that council previously instated to hold back, if you will. The averages are listed in attachment 1. Additionally, for council consideration, the Oak Bay Volunteer Services Society has requested consideration to enter into a multi-year agreement. With the district already providing a grant to Oak Bay Volunteer Services Society under a dedicated funding stream, formalizing terms and conditions of this grant is of benefit to both the district and the society. For this evening's adjudication process, to assist council, staff will be able to bring up on screen a worksheet to facilitate if council wishes to change any of those average values. After this evening's proceedings, the financial plan bylaw adoption is tentatively scheduled for early April. Upon approval, staff will issue notifications to all applications and will issue payments to successful applicants at that time. The recommendation before council this evening is that council approve the average council member assigned grant and aid total of $63,500 as outlined in attachment 1, and that council authorize staff to enter into a 3-year agreement with the Oak Bay Volunteer Services Society at a capped $40,400 amount each year. With that, I'll look to council's direction on next steps, and we are here to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaChance. Just for my clarification, that enter into a 3-year agreement piece, that is basically to move it to the middle of the next term so the council could consider that it's sort of in the mid-term, not sort of the beginning or end of the term. Is that the intention? Not that it'd be a 3-year term every term?
To you, Your Worship. Yes, the 3-year is considered a reasonable amount for a reoccurring grant of that nature, provides some stability for the grantee, and then also provides the organization to realize some of the administrative benefits. And also that does, you're correct, put that in the middle of the council term.
Very good. Thank you for that. Over to council. I do note there's a couple of items here that are asked of 7,500 and cumulative average of $100. I may just want to, I'm not sure that's a very positive response to those requests. We may just want to move a couple of those ones around. That those caught my eye. So perhaps I'll just go around to the table here. Councillor Braithwaite and then Appleton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I noticed that one as well. I mean, they're receiving very small grant amounts. Do you have any sense of whether those levels of funding, through you, Mayor, to Ms. LaChance, would still be meaningful for those recipients? Because when you're asking for $23,000 and we're giving you $300, it seems to me that that's not really a meaningful contribution.
I'm going to say that's more for council's determination than it is for staff. So I don't think that's a fair. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. Then my next question would be, do you have any feedback on whether averaging council scores is the most effective way to allocate the grants, or whether other municipalities use a different approach? I know we used to use a different approach many years ago, and it was tedious to go through that. But I find that this one we end up with just, having things like what's happened on for some of these organizations where they're getting $100 or $200. And so I think if we had been doing it the other way, we might not have gotten to that point. But do you have any other feedback from other municipalities on their grants and aid?
Ms. LaChance.
Thank you. Through your worship, thank you for the question. So my understanding is that at the time of adopting the averaged methodology, we had done a review of other organizations, and there was a recommendation from staff to council to adopt this methodology. There are a relatively, just from my own experience, a large number of grants and aids that council needs to consider each year. So having some methodology that would help streamline that when maybe some of the results do come out a bit odd with an averaged result, those may be the best for council's attention. There are pros and cons to any methodology. It is very much at the will of council in terms of that process you'd like to see for adjudication.
Thank you, Mayor. And I thank you for bringing forward the Oak Bay Volunteer Services Society to go into the 3-year. I think there's probably other organizations in there that we could possibly look at that as well, but that's a conversation for after. Thank you.
I might suggest there might be something here to just ask for the direct staff to bring back some options for developing a policy or something. I'll maybe just think about that to staff.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I might suggest, because I think we don't want to be doing things too ad hoc on that front. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So what I would suggest, I guess get down to brass tacks here, and I guess maybe not so much a motion to this effect, but I guess I would just sort of get a general sense of whether or not this is the appropriate avenue. There are 3 grants that I feel like, as Councillor Braithwaite has mentioned, are significantly out of step with the ask, and I think are probably not impactful to the organization. So I look at the Rewired Recovery Foundation, with $100 on a $7,500 ask. I see Recovery Tales Society with $200 for a $2,500 ask, and I see Water is Life Oak Bay High, which is $300 on a $23,750 ask. So what I would propose, or in terms of, I would suggest an approach that those 3 asks be reallocated. So essentially, those organizations not be funded, essentially because they're not really getting funded to any substantive amount at this point. The cumulative amount for those 3 grants is $600. So I would make the suggestion that that $600 be redistributed to 3 organizations that are not quite fully funded, but are of long-standing in Oak Bay. So I would suggest that that $600 be distributed for $200 to the Friends of Uplands Park Society, $200 to the Reconciliation Oak Bay Network, and $200 to the Community Association of Oak Bay.
I would second that motion.
I'd be happy to put the original motion on the floor, Your Worship, if that makes it easier.
Yeah,
guess we
I
don't have
think
the original
I think
motion.
let's put the motion on the floor, and then I'll take a motion to amend.
sorry.
Okay, so I'll put the original motion on the floor that council approve the average council member assigned grant and aid total of $63,500 as outlined in attachment 1 of the report titled 2026 Grant and Aid Application Adjudication with the amendments that I just presented.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. And just for the amendment, I have striking the 3 Water is Life recovery tails and Vancouver, Rewired Recovery Foundation, and allocating $200 each to Friends of Uplands Park, Reconciliation Oak Bay, and what was the third one?
Community Association of Oak Bay, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Community Association of Oak Bay, which is, okay, so that motion is still up on the floor. Anything else you want to add to it?
I think that as per the earlier point that was made, I think that when these rounded averages work out to be, inconsequential as compared to the ask, it's not a reflection of the fact that what those organizations have brought back is not important or they're not doing important work, but we have the opportunity to redistribute those funds to some organizations that can potentially use that as a value added to expand their services, whereas for a very large ask, a couple of $100, I don't think is going to make a substantive difference.
Okay, thank you. I'm just in the interest of time management, I'm happy to take other conversation than just these 3 things on the amendment. I'm happy just to take other conversation as well. But understanding the context right now is essentially a slight rejig of what's in front of us. Go ahead, Councillor Watson, and then Councillor Smart, and then Patterson.
Thank you. I support the first part of that. I think that makes eminent sense to take that $600 and put it somewhere else, but that's not where I would want to allocate it. And so I don't know if it's appropriate to move an amendment to the motion, but I'm not quite sure how that would fall out. But where I think it would be totally appropriate to send the money is to the Community Social Planning Council for the rent bank. It would be about our only contribution to affordable housing in our community, and it would get closer to their ask because we're quite below what it is right now. And they made a very good case for their request and the amount of draw on that fund that applies to Oak Bay. So I appreciate Councillor Appleton's suggestions. I think that what we see already for those 3 particular organizations, not saying anything, saying all things positive about what they want to undertake, that what they have already is very close to what they asked for. And so I would like to, if we've got a little $600 to spare, I would like to put it somewhere else. Thank you.
And why don't we just have a bit of a conversation, and we can raise these points as we go, and then if we wish to see it by motion, we can do that. I have my speaking order of Councillor Smart, Patterson, and Green.
Yeah, thank you. I'm in support of everything that has been suggested around the table. I had very similar thoughts in reviewing this. The only aspect that I would add to that conversation is that I would propose that we reallocate the money from the Island Strings Player Society potentially to the Community Social Planning Council. And the reason for that is they have applied to the CRD. And so that is our money that we're giving away just through the CRD. And it's being run through another grant process there. And so I just don't think we want to encourage that double dipping of funds.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps I might suggest, since that's $200, I might, in the interest of getting along, and these are very small amounts of money to spending lots of time on, that maybe those $200 could ultimately, it's an idea, just get moved over to that. And so those $200 would be allocated as proposed in the current motion, plus another $200 that would go to the Social Planning Council as one option. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I too have a different wish list, perhaps, but and it was difficult because some of these, the lists keep getting longer, and this is just as we go into tough economic times, this could become even more cumbersome. So I think we will have to find a different way of adjudicating this on a go-forward basis to perhaps eliminate some right up at the front and focus. But I, of course, would have allocated to Victoria Sexual Assault Center, and my reason for that is I don't agree with the staff report that showed it as not being of benefit to the District of Oak Bay. I know that not to be the case, in fact. The information from our police department is different. Certainly the information that comes out of the Victoria Sexual Assault Center is different. It does serve the Oak Bay community. I really dislike the fact that the province provided continuing funding for the Sexual Assault Center during COVID, and then has retracted a lot of it. And I find it extremely offensive that the nature of this service is not covered under our health system, which is where I think it belongs. But this is the only avenue that supports youth and young adults, particularly in this community at times of great traumatic experience. Otherwise, there is, and I know of experience with 2 people in this district, even with this, it was very hard to get in the queue, and getting assistance is extremely difficult. So I would reallocate greater funding for Victoria Sexual Assault Center, as some of the our neighboring communities within the region have done. And the other one that I would just like to make a comment on, and that is the Oak Bay Lawn Bowling Club, because I don't quite understand why this doesn't fit into a recreational activity, but it was established in 1957. I look at it almost as a legacy operation here in the community. I noticed that they've done a great job at leveraging grants and donations, and that the improvements that they have done with those grants and donations have been used to improve accessibility for members going up to 100 years of age, that they can still get out and have some physical activity, and for mitigating climate change, which is one of the goals of council. So, but nevertheless, I would reallocate the funding to Victoria Sexual Assault Center, because there is no other catch basin for this type of service in Oak Bay, and it is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Green next.
Thank you. And I do support the approach we're taking, but I want to support Councillor Patterson on the Victoria Sexual Assault Center issue. I had awarded them a much larger amount, and the reason I did is because intimate partner violence is on the rise, domestic violence is on the rise, and Oak Bay is not immune. We do have a significant percentage of domestic violence activity in our community, which is very unfortunate and tragic. So if I was going to reallocate some dollars, I would put it towards that sexual assault center. And the other thing is, I think you said that in your own way as well, it does speak to the heart of family health, because it isn't just women who are affected. For the women that are married or have partners, it affects their children. So it is a family issue as well. Thank you.
I do want to get to resolving this, because I know it's easy to spend hours on $600, and that's probably not the best use, but I'll just say my 2 bits on this since everybody else has had a chance to speak. So the motion that was on the floor, and some of the conversation we've had, I'm amenable to. These are not large amounts of money that we're end up talking about. I do have a couple of concerns about, and I hear completely around the Victoria Sexual Assault Center and these other social pieces. The grants, for the most part, are intended to help, sort of 1 or 2 year kind of event-based type pieces. If we're trying to step into the role of the province on any of these healthcare or social supports or other things, we will use up this money in a tenth of a second. There's just not enough money in this to make a big splash. So I think there's always this temptation to go down that path. I am a little leery of us becoming a major and continuing participant in that. There are aspects of this, like it's noted, Oak Bay Volunteer Society, which provides an enormous amount of support for social supports in the community, which is much more locally faced. And I think that there are, and I do think that even on things like the housing, although I support the rent bank, I do acknowledge there's, I don't know, I think $70,000 or $80,000 a year that goes to the CRD for the Housing Corporation to help support those funds. So it's not like, it's true we don't have a lot of land, but we do provide a lot for those affordable housing pieces. So I'm not dismissing any of that. I just want to share that extra sort of point of view. I'm probably supportive of the, again, I'm happy to just by motion, frankly, because we have a motion right now for the $600 to go to the piece. So maybe I might do is if Councillor, just in terms of the orders of things that were sort of brought up here, Councillor Smart, what I might suggest is, since you raised it, if you want to make a quick motion, another amendment motion to remove the $200 from Island Strings, then if that passes, then we can allocate that as part of a total of $800. So if you don't mind making that motion.
I'm happy to make that motion.
And it's seconded, okay. Any discussion on that? No, I'm just going to I'll manage this in a fairly quick way. So I don't see a lot of discussion on this. So the motion right now is the amendment is to also to remove that $200. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. So that leaves us $800. We're back to the amended motion, which allocates $200 to each of those three pieces. Perhaps I might suggest if we want to allocate that extra $200 to the Social Planning Council or to the Sexual Assault Center, that would be probably an appropriate piece, or unless you want to have a motion that moves all of that additional money to one or two of those other aspects. I would need a motion if anybody wishes to do that. Councillor Green?
I'm happy to move the Sexual Assault Center. Did you say $200?
If we wanted to move the additional $200 that was just removed. So,
Yes,
that's
I'll make that
available.
motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. So there's now, if this passes, there will be 4 different entities that will get the additional $200, the 3 named, and then the Sexual Assault Center. Councillor Appleton?
Just for clarity, Your Worship, I did propose 3 different organizations, but I'm also willing, to your discretion, to entertain the allocation of the $800 in its entirety. So that was a proposed idea of mine, but certainly if my fellow councillors have an idea that the entirety of the $800 should go to one of the organizations previously referenced, then I think that you might entertain that as well.
Oh, I would absolutely entertain it. I have a motion on the floor for the $200 that kind of spreads it across the entities talked about here. And that's currently sitting, so the motion which is an amendment to the amendment is to allocate the $200 to the Victoria Sexual Assault Center. Is that correct? Yes. Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mayor. I will support that motion to do the $200 to those 4 organizations. I think that we also have to remember that we do have a reserve of $7,090 if we chose to tonight to allocate some of that money to something that we feel pretty passionate about. It's up to our discretion to do that. I know we like to keep around $5,000-ish for the rest of the year to be able to pull on, but I think if there was a strong feeling from anyone around the table that they wanted to see money go, and a little bit extra money go to one of those organizations, that we could do that, but I will support the $200 to the 4 different organizations.
So the motion right now is just the amendment to the amendment, which is to allocate the extra $200. It's been pulled out already, so I'm going to call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. So we are currently sitting at, as it was prepared, but with the funding removed from the Water is Life, Recovery Tail Society, Island String Players, and Rewired Recovery Foundation. And that total of $800 has been reallocated at this point to Friends of Uplands Park, Reconciliation, Community Association, and Victoria Sexual Assault Center. That's where we're at right now. Councillor Braithwaite?
Mayor, just to remind you, if you could pull out the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission and vote on that one first, and then on the bulk of the grants and aid, because I do have to recuse myself for the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission.
Yep, that sounds good. Any other discussion before we get to calling the question on those? And I will separate them out. Okay, I don't see any. I might ask you to leave the room then. And I don't know if it was stated aloud, but Councillor Braithwaite sits on the board of the Victoria Film Commission. So I will deal with that one separately. So that is the ask on this is for the allocation here is $10,300 for that. I don't want to ask of $11,000. So I'm going to I'm just going to separate this out as the motion is live on the floor. I'm just going to separate this one out as a separation of the motion. So the motion is live on the floor only for the Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Can we just knock on the door to let her, Mr. Bowl? Oh, there she goes. Apparently was listening in. We then move to the main motion as minus that one item. It is live on the floor. The motion has been made and seconded. We've had amendments. Are we clear on the final, Ms. LaChance? Mr. O'Neill? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. Thanks for helping us Mr. O'Neill and Ms. LaChance. Never a super easy process, but they made it as simple as possible. Moving then to section 8.1. This is the Turkey Head Community Engagement Plan. Nope. My apologies, Ms. Hunt.
Sorry, I just noticed there was a previous motion on the previous report regarding the Volunteer Society and the multi-year grant.
For it to be efficient is too efficient. So would somebody like to make that motion? Moved and seconded. Is there a seconder? Any discussion on that? I just have one question, and it's too late now. Oh, Ms. LaChance is still there. Just in terms of the that agreement, that is something that they have typically come and laid out sort of what they're doing, and we know they do a lot of good work in the community. So by authorizing staff to enter into this, is that a process where they will sort of lay out the services that they're providing and then provide a report back to council on an annual basis or something of that nature? Is that the intent here?
Yes, to your worship, exactly. We would outline the scope of where the monies would be used. Sorry, excuse me. As well as any stipulations around financial statements and also annual presentation to council.
Great. Thank you very much for that. The motion is on the floor. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you. Moving to 8.1, the Community Engagement Plan. We have Ms. Bay here to provide the introduction. Welcome, Ms. Bay. And for those watching at home, Ms. Bay is our Director of Strategic Initiatives, who's responsible for this file. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have, in addition to myself here to provide a high-level introduction, I'll note that we also have our consultant on this project available online who can speak to the engagement plan itself. The report before you seeks your direction on the timing of community engagement for Council Priority Project number 47. The purpose of the project is to obtain input from multiple parties on the long-term future of Turkey Head or Spewhung Point. Council's sign-off on this project included a commitment for staff to return to Council with an engagement plan, and that's what's prompted this report tonight. As Council will recall, this work is closely tied to the future of the marina, with the current lease expiring at the end of 2027. Earlier this term, Council identified 4 objectives to guide decision-making on this project. The first was establishing a First Nations partnership. Second, ensuring a sustainable financial return. Third, activating the site for public use. And fourth, supporting environmental stewardship. Those objectives informed the consultant-prepared engagement plan before you today. Over the past year, staff and the consultant have been engaging with Songhees Nation, Kasapsan Nation, and the conversations with the nations have confirmed shared values, and specifically mutual interest in cultural presence on the site, job creation, environmental care, revenue opportunities, and an interest in potentially operating the marina. So in response to the nation's interest in operating the marina and recognizing that the current marina lease expires at the end of next year, we have initiated an expressions of interest process just for the marina buildings and associated water lot, and with plans to invite Songhees Nation, Kasapsan Nation, and Oak Bay Marine Group to respond. So each of those groups have been communicated with and are aware of that next step. In reviewing the engagement plan, the feedback we received from Kasapsan Nation was that they would prefer discussions around the future of marina operations, including the upcoming expressions of interest process, to proceed prior to participating in the engagement. Kasapsan Nation staff have also advised that before participating in broader engagement, they would like clarity on what Council means by a First Nations partnership. Proceeding with engagement without both nations at the table would mean losing out on opportunities for shared learning and relationship building. Given that Council has stated that an objective for this project is partnership with First Nations, staff recommend that Council pause this project until a post-2027 marina operator is secured. Pausing helps ensure that when we do engage, we do so collaboratively. Should Council choose to proceed with engagement in 2026 with the community, the plan is ready to implement, with activities scheduled for April or potentially scheduled for April and June. Staff would ensure that any engagement proceeds in alignment with the Council-endorsed IAP2 framework and that the many community organizations actively involved in Oak Bay would be notified and invited to participate in the engagement process. As mentioned earlier, our consultant on this project, Jennifer Fix from Honest Studio, is online and available to provide some brief comments and to answer related questions. Following that, staff are also happy to answer any questions. I'll note that we have Ms. Goodgrove, the district's communications manager, available beside me if there are any questions specifically about connections to district communications practices and council-endorsed framework and practices. Your Worship, that concludes my my comments, and as noted, Ms. Fix is available just to provide a few additional comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bay, and welcome, Ms. Fix. Thank you for joining us online.
Thank you for having me, Mayor and Council. I would just like to take this opportunity to underscore some of what administration has already shared in their report and to further highlight some of the learnings from the process, just to provide you with that context. So the first would be that we did learn that the three communities have many of the same values and the desired outcomes. There's a recognition of their shared opportunities and potential benefits for all three communities, and that the nation's objectives very much align with the objectives set out by Council. That was an important learning and takeaway from the last few months, the conversations that have been ongoing. Second item to highlight is that we heard very clearly that both nations are extremely interested in managing the marina specifically. And then the third key takeaway is that when we asked how they wish to be engaged, that they did share. They shared a desire for building on the momentum and continuing the dialogue at a government-to-government level, and expressing an appreciation for Oak Bay Council and wanting to work together with good heart and good mind. And then beyond that government-to-government relationship, they also shared an interest in joint engagement of the three communities of Songhees, Coasapsum, and Oak Bay. And the engagement plan that's before you today reflects some of those ideas that were put forward by Songhees and Coasapsum staff, but they also, as noted by administration, want clarity on a few items before supporting the district's engagement of their communities. And specifically, they're interested in greater understanding of what First Nation partnership constitutes for Council. They would like to have that discussion and those decisions unfold about marina operations. And then there's also some interest in further understanding, information gathering on what is feasible on the site. And these are the reasons that they put forward around wanting to keep the momentum going with the marina, but not wanting to enter into conversations with their communities from a kind of a trust perspective before there is a fuller picture. Before they were asking their members to, calling upon them to share their time and their knowledge and their ideas. So those were some of the key takeaways I wanted to highlight, and would be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ms. Fix. I think that helps clarify the piece.
Staff, I think I heard you say this, that community groups with significant involvement in reconciliation work related to Spewhung will be included among the organizations invited to participate. And the reason I'm asking that is because I've heard from members of the Reconciliation Oak Bay Network who've been involved in reconciliation work related to Spewhung for several years. And they've noted that they weren't included in the list of non-governmental interest holders in the engagement plan. So given that the work their network has done and the number of organizations involved, I think it might be helpful to consider including them as part of the focused engagement process. So just if staff can perhaps answer that one. Thank you.
Sure. Over to you, Ms. Bay.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. There's a very long list of organizations that we plan to engage in this initiative, and the groups cited in the report. I believe I stated specifically that it was not intended to be exclusive. So they're just samples of the types of groups that would be involved in the project. There's a much longer list, and absolutely the groups you mentioned will be among those.
Mayor, so because I was going to say, because otherwise I could make a motion later on, but if I understand that correctly, so, and I think they'll be happy to hear that they'll be included in the future, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Are there other questions for staff?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Moved. Is it seconded? Thank you. Any other discussion?
No, I think that staff have put forward a reasonable recommendation on this, because once we have better information on an operator being secured for the site, we will be able to have a more fulsome engagement with all of the parties that are listed, and certainly with our own community. So I think that at this point in time, it's a good recommendation. We should take it.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. And I know that one of the other concerns that was raised in the email that I received was that more communication along the way would help to reduce the confusion and frustration within the community. So I'm hoping that we can have more periodic public updates throughout the engagement process, so that the community can maybe better understand how the discussions are progressing.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Does staff want to comment on that, or is it more of a comment than a question, but happy to give the opportunity?
Your Worship, I think one of the challenges of this process to date has been, by necessity, some of those conversations have been happening outside of the public eye, and it's really only now that we're able to report on what the nature of some of those conversations have been, and certainly as soon as we've been in a position to report on it, we have been, and following this report and the direction that we received from Council, will be continuing to provide updates wherever we can, including likely website updates on Connect Oak Bay with respect to the decision that comes out of this tonight on the website very shortly. So our intent is certainly to be as open and transparent on this process as we possibly can be.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, through you to staff. I think it really, it's a wise recommendation. It shows great wisdom, and you have been dealing on the ground with the situation, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any other hands. I have a very quick question. There was sort of a question asked there. Maybe I'm not sure if it's actually seeking an answer, which is like, what does council mean by First Nations partnership? And in our conversations that we've had both with First Nations and around this table, I've tended to hear those. We're recognizing and appreciate the First Nations giving us their sort of top four sort of hopes and aspirations for engagement in this area. Without able to commit to any of those four, certainly all of the four, I think my take of this is that our reflection is to take their priorities and try and incorporate them into anything that we do. So I don't know if there's an answer we can give them back, but I think we're somewhat relying on them to on that piece of, and maybe I'm not maybe I'm misrepresenting that in council, but maybe not probably as a way of emotion, but I certainly have heard that quite often spoken to, is that that's the point of having that as our bullet there, was we wanted to get their priorities, and by having those priorities it allows us to incorporate those that sort of wish list into our process. And so I think that's probably the best answer we could possibly give them at this point, given that we obviously have to have an open mind with input from them and from the community as to what, and obviously the financial reality of what's possible on the site as we advance it. So I don't know if there's anything that we can do there to help give them some comfort in that process, but I wouldn't want just that to be left completely alone, given they sort of flagged the question. Yeah, before I get to motions on the floor here, I'm going to just open this up for any public input. We don't have people in the room here, but there may be people online. And one hand has popped up already, so Kathleen Matthews, if you wish to speak, if you just state your name and municipality of residence for the record, we'd appreciate that. And then you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and to Mayor and Council. I spent a lot of time at Spewhung, and I'm interested in this proposal, and I'm on the Reconciliation Group, NKOG. I just appreciate all the work that they've done to further help participate in this to date. What I'm wanting to know is, if we're focusing on the marina, what other Spewhung lands, if you can call that dump of rocks land, would be part of a marina management package? For example, would it include the place where the restaurant used to be? Would it include the current parking area? Are we really only talking about everything that I think is the marinas, where the boats are and the docks are and the maintenance sheds? So I just would like to know what would be included in a future arrangement with the Songhees and Esquimalt, and if you can answer that, I'd appreciate it, because I just would like to know the scope of the land. And I have read the seismic report, and I know that it's not really a buildable a place to build things because without an awful lot of deep anchoring. So if you could please respond to that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ms. Matthews. I'll do my best, and Ms. Spey, if you wish to jump in and correct me, I won't be offended. I think it's both, Ms. Matthews. So because of the very tight timelines we have on the marina itself, there is a requirement for us to see that management of the marina, the docks themselves. The RFEOI, or expression of interest ask, is really very specific to those marina operations portions of it. But the entirety of the land, including the restaurant space, any others, well, ultimately it would be the entire site. Whether all of that is developable is a big question mark, as you point out with the seismic pieces. So the now the RFEOI process does not preclude the partners from bringing forward innovations beyond those buildings, but the specific ask is for the marina, docks, buildings, et cetera. We do need an operator for that piece, and so that's why it's sort of being bifurcated, so that can advance while we go through this more robust discussion with First Nations and the community. Ms.
May I
Bayes?
add one other request then?
Absolutely.
This parking lot area is really heavily used, not only by filming industries that come in to film, but most of us so many people come there to park, not all just because of the marina, but also we come with our dogs, we come to watch the sunset, we come to look at the Mount Baker, the waves splashing up. So it is a very much an amenity for especially my neighborhood, and I think other parts of the community as well. So I'm wondering if there's any way that we can ensure that whoever takes over the license, if it's going to include all that rock that we transported over from 10 Mile Point, as I understand it, that we won't be excluded from being able to go out there and look and be able to, won't be off limits. That's what I'm wondering if we can, I'd like to request that go into whatever negotiations going on. I don't know how much support I have, but I think that would be very much important. I think there's so much support for Indigenous stewardship of their lands.
Sure. Ms. Matthews, I'll just say, I think you're probably ahead of the curve on this one, honestly. We're immediately dealing with the marina itself, and then we're trying to work with First Nations and the community as to all those things you point out about what is the highest and best use for the area as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me say my piece. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. I don't see other hands, but if anybody else wishes to speak, you can do so at this time. Again, if you're in the Zoom app, you can use the reactions tab to raise your hand, or if you're on the 855 number, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. And I'm not seeing other hands popping up, so I'm going to come back to this table, and I will seek a motion to advance us I'm not sure if I think the motion was actually on the floor, but I like doing the I think it was, anyway, just confirmation we didn't have the motion moved and seconded. Okay, I don't like doing that before I do the public input, but it was moved, so we will take that procedurally. It's correct. So I don't see other discussion, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. I'm just going to leave that with a comment that really appreciate this coming back into the public realm, and look forward to working with both First Nations and the community as we develop a vision and advancing that project. And so really thank you very much for the report and helping move that along. We move to section 9, bylaws and permits. We'll look for
I'll move that the
9.1.
official community plan bylaw number 4942-2025 amendment bylaw number 4949-2026 be read a third time.
Moved and seconded. This is the opportunity for debate. This follows our public hearing on the changes. These were mostly fixes and small text amendments, but if there's any discussion, this is the opportunity to do it. And certainly don't see any hands popping up wanting to speak. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And I'll move that official community plan bylaw number 4942-2025 amendment bylaw 4949-2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And I'll
9.2.
move that zoning bylaw number 3531-1986 amendment bylaw number 4922-2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. We've had the first 3 readings at a prior meeting. Time for sober second thought. Is there any other discussion? These are zoning bylaw amendments related to the short-term rentals program. Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And I'll move that municipal ticket information bylaw number 4846-2023 amendment bylaw number 4923-2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Same as last time. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And I'll move that business license bylaw number.
I might just, before you
yeah.
move it, I'm just going to see if there's anybody. So just as a procedural note here, before we get to the motion to adopt, this is open for public hearing. Because it's the part of the changes to the short-term rentals includes business bylaws. Business bylaws are required to have public notification. So if anybody saw advertisements in the Oak Bay News recently, that's what these relate to. So I'm going to just make another call here. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to address council on the business license amendments that are here as part of the short-term rental changes? I'm not seeing any hands being raised, so I am going to come back to this table. Please go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
That business license bylaw number 3603-1988 amendment bylaw number 4924-2026 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. And then we go to, under new business, we have a notice of motion regarding sign bylaw amendments. Councillor Braithwaite, why don't you read the motion into the record?
Thank you, Mayor.
Not the whereas clauses, just the therefore.
Yeah. Therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to prepare and bring forward an amendment to the sign bylaw in 1997 that would A, limit election signs on public property to designated locations, ensuring that accessibility, visual aesthetics, and traffic safety are considered in determining the locations, and B, provide a maximum number of election signs per candidate at each public property location, and also to inform the public of the changes to the election sign bylaw following bylaw adoption.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Is there a seconder for the motion? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Braithwaite. We have the whereas clauses, but you're absolutely welcome to provide a bit of background and motivation.
Yeah, I'm bringing, thank you to staff also for helping me with this. I am bringing this forward, this motion, because the election signage on public property has become an increasingly challenging issue for many municipalities. During election periods, we often see a large number of signs placed on boulevards, medians, and other public areas. While election signs are an important part of the democratic process, their placement on public land can sometimes create concerns around visual clutter, traffic safety, and accessibility. Our boulevards, parks, and streetcapes are shared public spaces. Reasonable limits on signage helps ensure these spaces remain safe, accessible, and visually welcoming for everyone. Many municipalities across BC have addressed this issue by introducing clearer rules for election signage. Cities such as Saanich, Richmond, Vancouver, Coquitlam, and Kelowna have implemented bylaws that either limit signs on public property or establish designated locations where signs can be placed. These approaches still allow candidates to communicate with voters while helping municipalities protect the quality and safety of their public spaces. Designated sign locations can actually improve fairness by ensuring each candidate has equal access to public space. Importantly, the motion before Council does not propose banning election signs. Signs would still be permitted on private property with the property owner's consent, which is where most campaign signage typically appears. What this motion asks is simply that staff review the current bylaw and bring forward options that could establish designated public locations and reasonable limits on signage in those areas. This would help ensure fairness for candidates, reduce visual clutter in the public realm, and provide clearer rules for both campaigns and staff responsible for enforcement. Clear rules reduce complaints and enforcement challenges for staff, and reducing sign proliferations also reduces environmental waste associated with election signs. I believe that this is a practical step that many municipalities have already taken, and I look forward to hearing staff's advice on how such an approach might work for Oak Bay. And also, I do know that there may be an appetite to have signs banned completely on public spaces. I wasn't sure how my colleagues would react at all to an all-out ban, so I thought this might be a good first step towards regulating election signs on public property and still have vibrant and competitive elections. This first step could show that reasonable limits can protect streetscapes without restricting democratic participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion's live on the floor, so happy to take discussion on it. Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. As we know, election signs act like business cards. New candidates rely on election signs for name recognition and perceived viability to run in the election. Any further limit on election sign locations in public spaces will disproportionately impact new candidates and favor those who have been on council longer and who have had many years to achieve name recognition. It also takes a lot longer for new candidates to gain permission for locations on private property. Myself, I found the process of placing election signs was straightforward and self-policed. I didn't personally receive any reprimand or taken signs from my process. I found it very cooperative and friendly with everybody helping to replace signs after lawn mowing happened. There are already many rules prohibiting the signs already in parks, and there's clear maps of where signs can be placed near UVic, as well as our existing sign bylaw. As this would likely be work for staff to revise this bylaw in planning, I imagine, I could not support prioritizing this work over our tenant protection policy, our affordable housing policy, our car share bylaw revisions, or the village planning processes. I anticipate this will also be a challenging process to agree upon sites, and therefore will be time-consuming for staff. And if this does pass at the table, I would request that the draft bylaw be reviewed by the next council, where it is reviewed in the context that it is not an election year, so it is not viewed as favoring existing councillors in the next election.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. I'm going to just take a point, because I think one of the things that you flagged, I think, is an important one, which is staff capacity. But I think the items you raised were in the Building and Planning Department. I just want to make sure I understand that where this, if staff can answer the question in terms of staff capacity, but also just clarification, because I would think this would probably go to corporate services more than the Building and Planning Department, but I don't know for sure.
Yes, thank you for the question. It would be a combination of corporate services and engineering.
Thank you. Moving to Councillor Appleton and then Watson.
Oh, thank you, Worship. So speaking against the motion on the floor, there's a number of different reasons for that. First of all, there's no demonstrated problem to be solved. There's no concern or problem to address. I've been through 2 elections and I've never encountered a single problem with any of my signs being at issue, and I'm not aware of any significant concern raised by staff with respect to management of signs on the property where they are allowed, on the properties where they are allowed. I've voluntarily managed my own signs and other people's signs just as routine maintenance occurs, and I've never heard any issues in that regard. So the time to assess whether or not there was a need for a revised sign bylaw and an impact on district staff was immediately following the previous election, when staff were in a position to be able to properly respond to whether or not there's actually an issue to address. So I would be happy for this to come back early in the new council term, again, as per Councillor Smart's comment, so that it does not immediately affect the upcoming election, and have staff assess whether or not there was in fact an impact on, in terms of resources required to monitor and enforce offenses of election sign regulations. I have no idea what that looks like, but I've never heard anything at this table that indicated that there was a significant problem. As for visual clutter, election signs in any given 4-year period between elections, election signs are up for about 2% of the time. So it does not represent a long-standing, it's a very, very short period of time that signs are allowed to be up at all. And there are already very limited portions of the district that election signs are actually permitted. There's maybe about a dozen. Most parks, areas, and in a lot of obvious public areas in terms of parks and that would border those types of areas, not permitted. Areas around voting areas, that's a lot of the schools. It really effectively leaves you a very small area that's actually available for election signs. As has been mentioned, sign reductions and sign restrictions differentially affect new candidates. And it has more of an effect and more of an impact on new candidates. I'm not sure, further to this, I'm not sure that Section 1B of the proposed bylaw, in terms of providing a maximum number of election signs, I'm not sure that it's something we actually can regulate. I think we can regulate location, but I'm not sure that we actually have the capacity. I'm not sure that it's wholly within the grounds of the Elections Act to restrict somebody on how many election signs they can put up. And yeah, this has been implemented in other jurisdictions, but I'll note that, the impact in the larger jurisdictions that are referenced here is much greater in terms of visual impact and in terms of the number of signs that are present, the number of signs that you'll encounter. The smallest of the communities that's referenced here in the motion is 6.5 times the size of Oak Bay. So certainly there's going to be a lot more candidates, a lot more signs, and I can understand the concern about visual clutter a lot more in that type of context. So I've got a number of concerns about this just in terms of it's looking to solve a problem that I'm not aware actually exists, and it has a differential and problematic impact on new candidates that are seeking to gain recognition. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Watson?
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's my underlying issue, is that I don't actually see that there's a problem. But I think that even if there was, I think that protecting the democratic right to say who you are in public when you're running for office is really important. I didn't perceive any issues. The idea of clutter is kind of weird to me. There were election signs up for a short period of time in the community, as there were in many other communities. I think that's what municipal elections or provincial or federal elections are all about. People need to get their names out and to be recognized so they can have discussions with the electorate. And I think also that what concerns me a little bit about this is suggest that signs on public land need to be regulated. What actually happens is that all those things that we talk about being on private property are actually on the public boulevard. So when a homeowner agrees to take a sign, 9 times out of 10, it's actually not sitting on private property, it's sitting on the public boulevard. So I think we need to be really careful what we're talking about here. If we're really talking about limiting signs on public property, that would do away with most election signs that anybody had at all. So I don't think that this is necessary, and I do agree that if you wanted to have a discussion about whether it was necessary or not, this is not the right time. It's probably after we have the experience of an election and we had some actual statistical, we had good data, and we could actually analyze it to figure out if there was something that needed to be done. But I'm sort of pro-democracy on this one. I think signs are important. We should have them out there, and I don't see that what's been done in this past election, the one before that, and the one before that, has created any problems in our community. So I wouldn't think I want to use staff time on it.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'm going to go to Just for a point of clarification, Councillor Braithwaite, if you don't, I'll make sure everybody has a chance to speak before I go back to you for a second time, but just to answer the question, I think a legitimate point raised about the public locations was the intention of this to, because I think it would help for clarity, to ban signs on like boulevards in front of houses, which is public property, or is it just sort of communal and public property?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. My understanding from past elections is that the boulevard in front of a house is actually considered an extension of the house for election signs. So if an election sign is on a boulevard in front of a house, my understanding is that that resident had to have given permission for that sign to be on that boulevard. So.
And that's the intent of your ask of the motion, is to continue that practice. Okay, just for clarification, because I think it's important that we all understand what it is that we're voting on. Any other discussion, questions? Councillor Green?
Thank you. And I really appreciate all the comments around the table. I support the motion because actually it's been brought to my attention a number of times over past elections or during past elections about the environmental issues around signs, which are mostly plastic or a plastic material. So it's the environmental issue was a big one, and the other one was the visual clutter in public spaces. So, and to be fair, I think Councillor Braithwaite has talked about this for a number of years. This is not a new notion or motion. So I will support it for the reasons that were stated. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Patterson?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think the comments around the table have been quite good. I really hate the clutter of all of the signs, my own included, I must add. But, I guess it would be dependent, like if we get 15 people wanting to run for election, we have very small corners. We never have had that. And so I agree with Councillor Appleton. It hasn't generally caused a problem in this. It's just that with all of the districts doing it at the same time, it certainly does add to visual clutter throughout the region, and so I don't mind it. I think I would support it because I think providing a maximum number of signs would, and I know it's hard to monitor, but it would be somewhat self-policing, and it might in fact create greater fairness if each person could have, you go to some islands and it's all covered. It's like having pink flamingos in the yard and it's all covered with one. It might be fairer if you did, if we did allow a maximum number and hope that people would stick to that. So I support it, but there were also signs that were hugely oversized in some locations that were actually blocking visibility of pedestrians and traffic. And there's nothing on here about limiting the size of signs, but some could get quite large. And anyways, I think I will lean towards supporting this simply because I don't like the clutter of signs.
Thank you. Speaking briefly to it, in assessing this, I think the point was raised as, is it necessary? And I think, to my mind, what's being proposed here is sort of a tweak to an existing bylaw. I think Councillor Patterson raised the point of size. Those are already regulated, I think, quite effectively because large signs have to be fully on private property. Sort of essentially removes them from sight lines. So where I have seen, I think, benefit of doing some, again, I see this as very much a tweak because we do have fairly limited public spaces allowed. I think the point was raised that there's a clear map at UVic, and I think having a clear map of the municipality that lays out here are the locations, circled on the map, would benefit everybody because right now it's a text-based description, which is sort of not adjacent to a park, but in public boulevards, et cetera. I know there aren't a lot of what I would call problematic areas, but I can certainly think of speaking to the point if it doesn't there's no problem here to fix. I don't think this is a massive problem, but I think there is a benefit. There's certainly, if not this, then some other mechanism, I think, to kind of flag areas that are less appropriate. There's a couple of traffic islands. I can think of the one at the corner of St. David where Newport turns into Oak Bay Avenue. That was full of signs that really did block a lot of the view of cars coming around that corner. There was a stretch down along McNeil Bay where there was a lot of signs that were very exposed to the wind that ended up causing quite a bit of problems. So it's not a major problem, but I can certainly see that being, I mean, whether you call it a restriction or just being, I would see this as more of a clarity issue of saying, let's create a map of appropriate locations. We as a body could then, say, yes, those all make sense, or they don't, based on staff input. My primary concern here is probably more just around the amount of time required to do this, but I think given the scope of what's being talked about here, which is really just a tweak to an existing sign bylaw, I don't see that being an issue. I would certainly ask that if this goes forward, and if there's any sort of thing more than a fairly small amount of work, that I would expect it to come back to this body for direction, because I don't think, I think there's a value here. I think it's beneficial to everybody to have the clearest possible rules. I definitely am not supportive of any concept of no signs on public land. I think we should allow them on public land. I think really here it's just like, can we just put those in places that they don't cause hazard or problems? So tending to lead towards supporting this, but yeah, my primary concern here is just the balance of work. Oh, and I need a
I'll
motion
make a
to extend
motion
the meeting
to
for
extend
15
the
minutes.
meeting for 15 minutes.
Thank you. I think that's probably sufficient for this topic. Moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question on the extension of the meeting first, and then all those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. I do owe Councillor Braithwaite a chance to respond, and then I'll go to second-time speakers for any of the points raised. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And again, the goal is not to eliminate election signs, but to ensure that they're placed in a way that provides traffic safety, accessibility, and appearance of our public spaces. Election signs have long been a part of our local campaigns, but campaigning methods are also changing as well, and they're changing significantly with social media and digital communication, and many municipalities have modernized their sign bylaws to balance the campaign visibility with the protection of public spaces. So, we're not eliminating campaign signage, but we're limiting it, and to private property, signs remain permitted, and designated locations still provide visibility. And I think that in the past there has been issues with the number of signs or signs in the wrong places, because if you ever came to the municipality during an election and you went downstairs into the basement, there would be piles of signs that had been picked up by the bylaw officer and left downstairs either for people to come and pick up, or they get chucked away, tossed away at the end of the election. And the counter argument that I would say that it favors incumbents or well-known candidates, I don't think that's true. I think that designated locations can actually improve fairness, because it can create a more level playing field without limits. Campaigns with larger budgets can dominate public space, and I think a structured system with equal sign limits. So if all of us are only allowed to have 2 signs in each location, that's a good limit, or 3 signs, whatever it might be, and that can ensure that every candidate has the same opportunity for visibility. So I hope this goes through, because I would like to see us be able to limit the number of signs, and maybe make a better and more even playing field for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor Smart, and then Green for second-time speakers in Appleton.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor to staff, I just wanted to clarify with this motion, as with similar motions that have come forward at the council table, I would assume the next stage is that we would receive a little project background or understanding the staff time and the impact on existing work for this scope, and I just want to clarify.
Ms. Anderson, we don't usually direct things towards you for work, so this is probably maybe a bit
No,
new for
thank you for the question. Through you to Councillor Smart. I would have to be looking at the criteria for a council party project for this. I'm not sure if this specific motion would have all the requirements for a council party project.
Councillor Smart.
Well, thank you. Then through you, Mayor to staff, again, I guess just do we have any more information to this point about how much staff time we feel this would take up and whether it will impact any existing work and timelines?
As best you can answer that
Thank you.
question, Ms.
Thank you.
Anderson.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Smart. This will, the work for doing this bylaw would be in addition to our current work plan items.
Councillor Smart?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, then just to clarify then, in order to, if this was asked to be completed before the election, is that delaying other existing work in engineering or corporate services?
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. I could speak for corporate services. We would have to prioritize other work in order to get this bylaw before council before July, when the election bylaws do need to be adopted, and in order for us to transmit the information. Director Rennick is online, and he could possibly speak to how it would affect his work plan items.
Sure, Mr. Rennick, if you're, you see you there, I'm not sure if you're, he's there. Yeah, I appreciate this is, you know, staff don't go away and do preliminary work on how much time impact this would have, so I appreciate it may be hard for you to answer the question directly in terms of the amount of work taken, but if you can provide any insight, that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It would be very helpful for a review of finding designated locations if there were some parameters around how many designated locations council is looking for. There was some discussion about signs on the boulevard, and I'm not sure whether the intent was that those would be included or excluded. Certainly, addressing this motion was not on the work plan, and if the motion were to be passed, similar to what Ms. Anderson said, we would need to take a look at what other work we would shift in order to assist corporate services in meeting that July timeline.
Councillor Smart, anything else? I have Councillor Appleton. Oh, sorry, Councillor Green and then Appleton.
Just quickly, I appreciated the comment. Signs are a real cost issue for new candidates. In fact, I've met with a couple of younger candidates recently, and their first question is, I don't know if I can afford signs, or as many signs as I've seen in past elections. So, you know, that is an equity issue or a fairness issue. I would say signage comprises at least half of the budget of any modern campaign. So just a point on equity and fairness.
Councillor Appleton and Patterson.
Thank you, Worship. So just following up on staff's comments, any other time that we create work for staff, and staff have identified that there is a inconsequential amount of staff time required in presenting this bylaw, in every other similar situation, we have staff prepare an analysis of the staff time required. Maybe it's not a full backgrounder, but it's at least an assessment of the staff time required. And both corporate services and engineering have both said that other work is going to get set aside, or may have to get set aside, in order to advance this in time for the election. So I'm just not in support of that. We've spent the last number of months talking about work plans and the financial plan and where staff are spending their time. I'll just reiterate my concern about this is not appropriately timed in my view. And with the additional time crunch of having to get it done before, as Anderson is mentioning, well, before the election itself kicks off, that constricts it even further. So I feel that this is very inappropriately timed. If there's a concern about it, I would ask that this be put aside, revisited once the election has happened, and an analysis conducted on whether or not there's actually a problem to address, and not have to put staff on the spot to do bylaw-related work on such short notice. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and appreciating Councillor Appleton's comments, but but listening to Director Rennick, who is asking for council to identify the number of locations, it emphasizes to me more than ever that we actually do need a map. because we do need to know where the locations are, and that it can be quite confusing. And so I think that some of this work does need to be done prior to the election, if to at least identify those public locations, because I don't know that I can identify to Director Rennick how many locations I want until I see the map. So I will support this.
I might just given the concerns that have been raised here, I'm just wondering if the mover might be willing to sort of amend it that just gives direction that staff can return the matter to council if there's any substantial impact on work plans.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mayor, because I would hate to add an exorbitant amount of time to the staff. My feeling is that this is probably, as you had mentioned before, just a little bit of a tweak to the bylaw, so it'll be interesting to see what comes back. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for the amendment to add that? So the amendment would just be the staff, sorry, I can't read my own handwriting, return the matter to council if there's any substantial impact on work plans. And in truth, our assessment of the impact on staff is often doesn't understand. There's probably many legal interests and overlapping things here that might cause staff to have to go do research and do other things that might stretch us out. So I think it's important. I think I've heard that pretty loud and clear. So on the amendments, this is not the main motion, but to add that amendment to the motion, is there any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed. That carries. We're now to the motion as amended. Councillor Smart?
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered if I could ask one further clarification, and I'm not really sure if it's for staff or the mover of the motion, but I guess when I saw this, I had imagined that we would need to have maps of the entire district. So this is not just a bylaw amendment, but this is a series of, I don't know, 30 maps or something that show all the different locations, like all the little traffic triangles and exactly where, because it talks about safety on a particular traffic island. So if there's a portion of that traffic island, that's why the work scope seemed immense to me, to determine which locations and the portions of which locations, and then to kind of figure out, based on the number of candidates, like how many signs you could have, and then what if the area is so small. But I don't know, it seems highly complicated to me. So my question is just with regards to, would there not be maps produced to back up this information? Otherwise, how do you indicate exactly where a traffic triangle is?
Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Trying to get us out of here at 10:15.
I just wanted a note, just going back to the previous comments about the work plan. I've just looked up the definition of a council priority project. It does not meet the definition of a council priority project. This is a bit of an anomaly, though, because council does pass resolutions from time to time that requires staff work, but normally there's not a deadline associated with those. So this is where we're getting into that, there is a bit of a deadline, so staff will take it away and make sure that this isn't going to adversely impact other items that are on the work plan within this time frame. With respect to identifying, my understanding is that we're not going to impact the signs that go in front of people on the boulevard in front of residential areas. This is really focusing in on 4 or 5 locations throughout the district, such as traffic islands or public boulevards that are not residential, where we identify that there could be up to a couple signs per candidate. Obviously, we don't know how many candidates at this point, but a couple of signs per candidate. We identify those, and we would come back to council, confirm those locations, and then have a map associated with those so that candidates know where the appropriate location would be. Having come from Coquitlam, where we have this system, sort of 10 locations and limited number of signs, that was my understanding of what we would be looking at here. I hope that helps.
I think it helps. Any other discussion? Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor
Yes, I'm interested. I'd actually like to ask a question to Ms. Hunt then, who has experience with such a bylaw. I guess one of the things that comes up as a concern for me here is that you don't know at any point in time how many candidates you have, and you've got limited amounts of area. So is the bylaw complex with formulas and enforcement provisions, or like what actually happens? It seems like a lot of work for a small fry.
I think we're overcomplicating this a lot. Ms. Hunt?
Yes, thank you through Councillor Patterson. No, it's really just identifying sites that are large enough to, accommodate a number of signs. We're not getting into, those specifics of formulaic calculations.
That does sound fancy, though. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. So if we're identifying signs that are large enough for a lot of signs, then we're potentially excluding like 24 small areas that were spaces where new candidates could put public election signs. So we are potentially seriously reducing the impact that new candidates could have on public spaces from the previous election, is what I'm hearing.
Thank you. I think that's probably a fair statement. I think until we get the map back in terms of where those would be, I think that would be the question. All right, the motion is on the floor as amended. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? I have Councillor Watson, Appleton, and Smart opposed. That does carry. Certainly look forward to, if there's obviously any substantial impact on staff, then please come back to us. And I think that's it. Any other notices of motion? No? Any notices of motion? I'm not seeing any. I'll call. Get a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries.